Committee of Whole now come to order. Chairman Nicholas, are you ready? I'll go ahead and take a privilege of the floor while you're getting ready. So, folks, right behind us in this, I guess that's West Gallery, we have from Goshen County, we have our party chairman and his family. Please stand up. Kirk Haas.
Madam Chair.
Please begin.
Thank you. So if people can't hear me, just kind of wave a hand a little bit, and I'll try to move a little closer to the mic. But that doesn't mean I'm talking any louder, though. So, ladies and gentlemen, now we're going to walk through each agency. I'm going to do the first four agencies, the four electeds, other than the superintendent. Walk you briefly through their budgets. And you can follow me. The easiest way to do it is to follow me on the, because this is what I'll be using, is the, we call it the crib sheet, but used to call it the cheat sheet, but we don't like that word, so we're going to be politically correct on what we call it. Summary sheet. And if you have questions at the end of each agency, I'll try to do my best to answer them. And if I can't answer them, I'll find out the answer. So first of all, and what we do, we don't move it, we just explain it, because the process is we move the whole bill at once at the end. So it's each agency is just an explanation for the body before we vote on the bill. So I bring you the governor's, section 1, the governor's office. Just a little bit of background on the governor's office. The governor has 39 employees. Of those, 20 of them are Homeland Security. So that means he really has just 19 folks for secretary, staffing, administrative assistants, and then his analysts for different sections, along with his deputies. The Homeland Security is funded primarily through federal funds, just so you understand the funding model of how that works. So we'll go into his standard budget. And I'm just going to walk through what those modifications are. Some of the governor's letters we'll hit at the end, the ones that aren't in his budget, and as we go through the budget. So as we walk through them. So the first, we got 1 through 12 on the footnotes down there, and I'm going to kind of skim through the ones that are important and ones that are not. The first one is just reassigning $25,000 for personnel for the governor's residence because they're short on staffing. I don't know if you've been out there, but they got rid of part of their staff as part of the budget cuts, and so when you go, you got to do your own dishes sometimes. And so we're just trying to restaff up a little bit. The next one is Governor's Letter 15. This is $600,000 general funds one time for temporary staffing to provide grant writing capabilities. And so there's no one in particular in the governor's office to help write grants, either for example, the infrastructure bill that's coming out, when we have to make submissions under the ARPA fees, and in discussions with the governor's office, they need someone who can specialize in grant writing. And so they're either going to hire someone, or this also allows them to contract with a grant writing company. What they can go out and write the grants for local communities, for your cities, towns, and counties, to raise more money and assist them in getting that done. There's also this and the next footnote are combined together for a total appropriation of $1.2 million over the biennium. There's reports required, so that the concept is if this doesn't pay for itself, in other words, we don't bring enough grants to justify these positions, we're going to get rid of them. The other part of this is, for example, on the large project funding that we talked about earlier, that personnel is going to require special expertise, literally perhaps a retired CEO who's a chemical engineer or someone of that nature that have the ability to fully understand and comprehend what a hydrogen hub is and how it works, or the same with this, carbon capture. So we gave a larger amount. So this will be an expert essentially to help promote and foster and push those projects. So then that takes the first three. Going down, we denied the governor's request to reduce the international marketing positions and travel money. We added back $125,000. We funded that at that amount for the 250 for at least 8 years, I believe. And if we cut it off, there was a reason to reduce during COVID because you couldn't travel. But now that COVID is theoretically diminishing and easier to travel, as soon as he can get on a plane and go, or assist, say, livestock producers or soda ash folks to go overseas and help promote their business, then we want to be part of that. Going down then, next, we have adopted the Gov's Rec 120th General Fund for transition expenses for the governor. All four of the electeds have transition dollars. It's $10,000 for most of them. Although with the soup, we doubled that because obviously we just had a new superintendent. We need to fund that transfer. And for and this happens then on the election if someone is out of office, someone new comes in, we provide them with moving expenses. The most is for the governor, it's 120. The other ones are 10,000. Next, we adopted the Gov's Rec for $52,000 to match expenditures and revenues on the Energy Response Fund. Next, we did Governor's Letter number 7. This is 8 and 9 are really go together. It's increasing $1 million plus $1 million on the federal the Federal Natural Resource Policy account. One of these is for the Black Hills National Forest because that is coming up where the forest is going to do a comprehensive review of that plan. And we want to have full participation in it. So we're allocating specifically $1 million to participate in that process. And then the other $1 million is what we normally provide to this entity to help various folks to quagmire through the federal regulations on any type of EIS or whatever that particular program is. Then we go to number 10, that's special revenue in footnote number 6, allowing all funds within the Federal Natural Resource Policy account to be available for expenditure. So that's just a follow-up. Once again, making sure the funds are sufficient and carrying funds forward. Number 11, we adopt the Governor's Rec of $900,000 to increase authorized expenditures. Once again, Federal Natural Resource Policy account. And then number 12, we decrease the Governor's number 17 letter, and you're going to hear a lot about that letter as we go through. And this is that when the WIP project that I talked about in my opening remarks, he wanted $55 million. There's already been 26 put in through CARES Act dollars. We basically use those ARPA General Fund conserved dollars to fund another $27.5 million on that project. We also ask for specific reports, so we see metrics, we see where the money is going, what they're doing with it, and so we can make an evaluation on whether or not to further fund it and move forward with it. And those funds go primarily to the community colleges and to the University of Wyoming. And if there are any questions about the governor's agency, I'd be happy to take them. If not, I'll move on to the Secretary of State.
Representative Henderson.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Sorry for this interruption. There's $100 million, I understand, it's called discretionary money. It's related to the governor, I think. Is that in this or somewhere else?
Chairman Nicholas.
So there's an echo in this room, and if you're not loud on the mic, I can't discern your words very well. So the $100 million is in the ARPA bill. That's the ARPA direct. No, yeah, I take it back. It's in section 300s. So we'll get to it when we go through the 300s. Agency 2 it's a simple budget. It's almost identical to what we had 2 years ago. If you go down, there's a couple minor corrections for it. By the way, the Secretary of State's total budget is about $8.5 million. What's fun about the Secretary of State's office is through the collection of fees for corporations, limited liability companies, all those type of fees, he puts into the general fund roughly $57 million a biennium to help fund general, our system of government. And so we like taking care of the Secretary of State because he helps pay our bills. So the first thing is very simple. It's just ETS database. We talked about that earlier. You'll see lots of ETS requests. Those are just per functionary. Then the next three, he added $64,000 for a constitutional amendment. There are 4 constitutional amendments circulating in the body. 2 of them were brought by Capcom, and there's 2 more out there, depending on what happens to them. $64,000 pays for 1. So this will be amended, or some other place we will find sufficient dollars for every one that passes both houses by 2/3 vote and is signed by the governor. It costs $64,000. And so that's fun that we put in there once they pass to make sure that we can do the required advertising when you have to publish those for the constitutional amendment. Next is $10,000 one time for transition expenses. We talked about that. And then he specifically came and asked for basically a return of parts of his travel budget for his staff. They spent a lot of time going around the state working with our clerks of court on various different issues. They cut back most of their travel during the budget austerity cuts, and so they asked for those to be put back. So that's the sole amount of requests for the Secretary of State, and I'd be happy to answer questions. Seeing none, I'll move on, and I would bring to you the State Auditor's Office. And again, a very simple budget. 62% of her budget basically pays for the Wolf system and all the processes and software and hardware to manage the bookkeeping for the state of Wyoming, because she's the chief accountant for the state of Wyoming. She's our payroll officer. That's her primary function as the auditor, and as well as being on the chairman of the board, essentially on all the various committees that we have. We're going to her budget exception requests. She turned back $48,000, so she's giving money back. They eliminated 1 position. They took part of the money and basically modified the description of that job so they could get a full certified CPA accountant, and they used part of the funds then to pay for that position, and then the remainder of the funds they reverted back in their budget. Next, $10,000 is the transition expenses, and then their last one is $2.698 million. This is the retiree health insurance contribution. All we're doing here is taking it out of her budget and moving it into a separate location. So this is just a transactional modification. So that's all there is we have for the State Auditor's Office. If there's not any questions, I'll move on. The next I would bring you is the State Treasurer's Office. So as I talked about a little bit earlier, since 2018, we've added roughly 14 positions to their office. I think 5 of them are on the investment side, then 4 new accountants, and we're adding several more. That 14 is the 2 more I think we're adding in this budget. This is, again, in order for them to properly staff and manage their in-house account or their in-house investment portfolio. And it's been a learning progress all the way along. And they're frankly, they're still struggling to get it to convert and modernize their office. They're still understaffed, so we'll see more positions come in here. They just hired a national accounting firm to come in, and I think they have 4 people helping them just to balance their books. because they can't keep up with the amount of work that's being turned out from the investment team. And this has been going on for literally just over 2 years. The LSO hasn't received any official reports on true balances since July. We've received some numbers, but we don't have a full and complete accounting. And the last time I heard, there was $120 million of dollars out there that are unaccounted for, just because they're not, most of their accounting they're doing on spreadsheets, and they're doing it by hand. And it's, they've hired it's called Broadridge. It's a company that's going to come in and modernize all their proceedings. So once that's done, and that they provided us an implementation plan, so it's supposed to go into effect by July 1. So with that, you'll be able to hit a button, and you can basically, theoretically, it'll tally all the trades for the day, measure up your accounts, and you'll know where you are, where your money is, and how much you've traded and how much you haven't. That's a work in progress, and so we continue to struggle with that. And you'll see down in the footnotes, we're requesting from the Treasurer's Office various reports so we can keep tabs of this process going forward, and frankly, just bring the books up to and balance them. And we're working with them in a cooperative fashion. Literally, we're saying, whatever you need to get this done, let us help you do it. So that's what you'll see and what our requests are here. So let's go to the footnotes. Number one is the transfer of one full-time position from a central office of human resources. That's just a transfer on human resources. So the average on the human resources, it's basically 250 state employees for every one resource officer. They had a human resource officer in their office, and they only have 40 employees. And so they wanted that human resource officer to take over more other agencies. And what had transpired is that human resource officer actually did a lot more functions than just a human resource officer. And so we want to accommodate them so that, number one, they can have someone that takes over part of those duties. But that's just one of those issues with the human resource component of it. Okay, we'll go to footnote number 2, adopt the governor's rec, $155,000 to move and reclassify a vacant position. This is for a compliance person in the investment team, because basically they have to self-audit and do a compliance check on all the things they do, and in addition to an outside independent audit whenever you're doing internal trading. Number 3, we denied Gov's rec and added $211,000 to move position number 16 to Unit 801 and Unit 101. This is a legal assistant to help do the legal work that is required when you write the contracts for the various investment folks that they work with. And they're also writing other specific legal documents when they're doing their own internal investing and reviewing all of them. So it's a fairly arduous task. Next are moving transitions. Next, number 5. This is one of the reports we're requiring quarterly reports, providing a reconciliation of cash and investment earnings and all transactions conducted in the prior quarter. So essentially quarterly reporting, and to provide that timely. This is, we're explaining what we want, but we're also providing them the ability to upgrade and up their offices so they can also get it done. At number 6, footnote number 3, implementation of the recommendations of the operational audit of the investment and financing accounting. Basically, the IFC looked into their processes and made recommendations for upgrading their accounting system and bookkeeping process. So that ties back into this whole discussion that I've just laid out for you. Then footnote number 7, we require monthly reporting. Once again, that's the same issue on some different issues. Then 8 and 9 are reimbursements for veteran property tax exemptions to, so we provide these exemptions, but we don't, we have to pay for them. And so, because the taxes still have to be covered by somebody. And so this, every biennium, we repay these particular the exemptions for different veterans taxes. Also, you'll see some for the reservation. Then let's go to number 10. This is adopting the Govs Rec. General funds one time. That's more, let's see. Oh, this change the funding source of position 22. This is once again a position from the general fund to special revenue. This is an accounting position. Most of the work is done for the investment team. And so the special revenue is basically the proceeds of their investment earnings. So we took it out of the general fund and put it into the special revenue. Next, we denied the governor's rec and allowed him to move another position, transfer a vacant position to a full, this is a second legal position that they requested. Number 12, added footnote number 6, specifying requiring increase of maximum base pay salaries levels for investment fast. I don't think I said that right. What we did is we said no increases to the investment team without legislative action. So some of you may recall that we created a compensation, performance compensation package for their investment team. We did that because that's how we get highly qualified professional investing people to work in Cheyenne, Wyoming, to manage and trade stocks, bonds, real property, all of those things that investment managers do. And we, even though we gave them a substantial pay raise compared to what other folks in Wyoming state employees make, they're still far below the average of what they would make if they were working for a private company in Denver or Salt Lake. But it's a good crew. They're young, they're excited, and it's fun to go watch them. You ought to go see what they do. Next, we've got one more accountant for $219. That's footnote 14. Next, we adopt the governor's rec to reclassify a position, and that's the transferring an accountant again. Number 16, we adopted the gov's rec of $38,000 for county reimbursement. That's the Native American property exemption. And finally, $84,000 one-time of reimbursements again. So now I skipped number 13. And 13 is an issue that that we've been struggling with on the process of how we oversee and audit the trading and the practices in the treasurer's office, but also make sure they have the requisite expertise on the folks on how that's being operated. So this was also recommended by the IFC, the Investment Funds Committee, is that the office needs either a CEO or a COO, Chief Operating Officer, to run the office, and particularly the back office. And we need someone there who understands the computer systems, understands how the investment practices work. So it's a highly technical position that would be, in the private market would be a $400,000 to $600,000 a year job. That's just something, we're doing enough trades and doing enough business, and we need to kind of treat it like a business and get someone qualified in there to do it. So our funds, our investments are managed by SLIB. And so SLIB kind of sits as the corporate body, and the treasurer's office is a member of SLIB. But when you have a CEO or an auditor, that person doesn't report to your chief executive to the chief executive officer. They report to the board, because if you're reporting to the chief executive officer, then you're under his thumb on what you do, how you do it, and how high you jump, and how far, and how you manage your office. So by reporting to SLIB, you have the full board to review the work, to get an objective position of what's going on in the company, in essence, and report back. That's a common practice in corporate America, and the IFC recommended that we kind of follow that path, and so that's what we're doing with this position, and we funded it. So,
Chairman Nicholas? We have a couple lined up here. So Representative Yin?
Madam Chairwoman, thank you. So Chairman Nicholas, just a question. So you mentioned that we've had delays in reporting the accounting from the Treasurer's Office. And I'm just wondering if you can elaborate that a little bit. What is the normal reporting procedure? And you said it's been going on for 2 years. Is that particularly abnormal? And is that what some of these appropriations are attempting to fix? Thank you,
Chairman Nicholas?
Madam Chairwoman.
Thank you. It's in essence, they're behind on the reconciliation of the books. And so instead of catching as soon as we move forward, it's kind of 2 steps forward, 1 step back. And so that's just where we're at. And I've got a little handout that I can pass out to you, Representative Yin, because we had LSO kind of put together a description of the process. I'll be happy to make that available for you.
Chairman Wilson?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I do have a question about footnotes 8 and 9. And I want to say, I think the reference to what page number it's in the budget request is a new thing, and that's a great feature. So appreciate that, although it didn't answer my question. So footnote 8 has a governor's rec of 2.3 million for reimbursements of property tax exemptions, and then 9 has a governor's rec of 3.6 million reimbursement, and then that says one time for county reimbursements of property tax. And I just couldn't tell from the narrative. Could you just explain for me why there's these 2 different footnotes for that?
Representative Walters?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To answer that, and it actually occurs again in summary notes 16 and 17 on the Native American property tax exemptions. And what this is we allocate a certain amount of money, but we don't know how much will be utilized each year. And so the effective immediate one time is a known number as we reimburse the counties, because these are actually county property taxes that are paid. So if we don't do this, it's an unfunded mandate onto the counties. And it occurs in both of those summary notes 8 and 9, again, in 16 and 17, same factor. Then the next number, which is the ongoing number, is the expected amount, the anticipated estimate, I should say, of what will be coming forward throughout the next biennium to cover those veterans property tax and Native American property tax exemptions. Again, these are county property taxes that are reimbursed to the county when individuals take advantage and utilize those programs.
Minority
So
Floor Leader
I hope that answers that question.
Conley, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And if the good representative could stay, I have questions along those same summary notes as well. So 8, 9, and 16 and 17 are all about, are they both about reimbursements? And are those reimbursements one-to-one? So do the counties send in what they had, what their loss was, and the state reimburses them? And that's an exact figure. And then is the next one the anticipated figure for the next year? And it just seems strange to me that the figures don't match up more, if that's the case.
Representative Walters?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Great question there, and it's about those property tax values. And so the reason those don't match up is, yes, to start with the first question, yes, it's a direct reimbursement to the counties based on not what they have lost, but what these programs have cost them. So if an individual applies for the program and meets all their expectations and goes through it, then it costs the county X number of dollars. They submit that to the state for reimbursement. That's how that works. The reason they don't match up is because property values change. If a person is eligible for the program, but moves from one house to another, if they utilize it on a vehicle versus a house exemption, which if you go read the statutes, all of these things are eligible and allowable. And so as the enrollees in the program change, it causes that estimated dollar value to change. So I hope that begins to answer the question. Again, the one time is to make up for what is a known number to reimburse the counties that they are lacking based on what they have already expended. And the estimated number, that's the ongoing number, is just that, the estimated number, what it will be in the upcoming biennium.
Minority Floor Leader Conley.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you. I do have another question, but it is on that summary footnote number 13, which the good chair of appropriations was talking at before we started taking questions. And that one, my question is procedural. When you look at that footnote in the budget itself, it's a very specific outline of how a hiring process should go about. And I am just curious if that is something that we're allowed to do in the budget these days. And in particular, there were other elements in here about reports, but that one there kind of struck me as something a little bit more than what I was used to in the budget.
Chairman Nicholas.
So I agree. It's unique, but because of the situation in that office, it's necessary. It'll be a temporary fix, and obviously it'll come back in his general budget 2 years from now on out. And it was the best construct that we could put together to accomplish the goal of making sure that SLIB is actively participating, involved in the operations of the Treasurer's Office and in the investing of over $20 billion. And so that's just what we came up with.
Chairman Swanser.
Well, thank you, Madam Chairman. Just one more follow-up on that. I just want to understand the org chart. So we have a chief investment officer, and now we're going to have a chief operations officer, but the chief investment officer works for the state treasurer, but the chief operations officer or the CEO, whatever they call it, is going to report to SLIB. I just need someone to connect the dots of an org chart on who reports to who with this new position for me.
Chairman Nicholas.
Well, I think it's fair. It is what it appears to be. The org chart will be that you have the chairman of the board, you have a CEO, and there'll be a chief operating officer. Operating officer reports to both entities and is basically semi-independent from the CEO so that he can perform his function for the SLIB board.
Representative Larson.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. If I could go back to the Native American property tax exemption, one of the things that that kind of got us into a little bit of pickle last year is the treasurer tried to take that into their step 2 reduction. And we put part of that back, which did not account for the total amount that they actually needed to be reimbursed. So that was when the good minority floor leader talked about that being kind of an unusual number there. That was part of the reason why, is because we're putting back in everything that they should have covered in that step 2, and then this year is an estimated amount.
Any more questions? Representative Larson.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I guess I have questions on our elected official that is over the Treasury. So does the new position, the CEO or COO or whatever, making the decisions of where the money is invested? And our treasurer, the person heading that agency, what is his duty? Just part of the SLIB board then?
Representative Walters.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This position in summary note number 13 that we're discussing here is really to manage more of the operational factors of the investment side of the office. It is, this individual would not be in charge or the sole decider or anything close to that of how funds are invested. Those functions would still go through the channels that they're going through today. This would be managing that investment side of the office that is really a new entity within the state treasurer's office that we've brought in-house in the last roughly 5 years. It's generating probably $60 to $70 million more a year off our investment incomes and what we're saving through fees, what we're outperforming the benchmark because we're doing this certain classification of investments in-house. So, but then to do all that, you have to have accountants and you have to have folks reviewing the process. But we have the IFC, which is another investment committee that makes recommendations to the SLIB board, who works with the elected that's in this office to create what is called the investment policy. No one really makes, the investment team does make day-to-day investing decisions, but they're all based upon an investment policy that has been developed and approved. It's developed within the treasurer's office, goes through with the recommendations of the IFC, and then ultimately approved by the SLIB board. That's the process today. That's how it's been going for many, many years. And that will not change with this position. This position is to run the back office investment side of the house to make sure that as those investments are traded and come and go, they're accounted for properly. As the income is then distributed out to the various agencies that receive income off of these investments to make sure that's all accounted for properly. So the decision-making process will not see a major change.
Representative Zwanitzer?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Moving on, I'm trying to reconcile footnote 2 and footnote 15 at the same time, because you're taking a position and you're spending $155,000 in general fund, but you're also adding another 219 of special revenue. But I assume it's the same position and it's going to be 2/3 funded with special revenue and 1/3 general funded, and we're still talking about the same position. What is that position and how much is it worth, and what's its title, and why is it $375,000?
Chairman Nicholas?
So I think I can help. That's in brackets. So on footnote 2, it's a reduction of 155,000. And then go down to 15, that then fully funds and reclassifies that position. And that's for one accountant. I'll have to get out and get the total exact wage of that particular person, but I'll have to dig it up.
Representative Washit?
Thank you, Madam Chair. 2 quick questions about the COO position. What other states are there that have a COO that doesn't report to their treasurer, that reports to some other body that works in this fashion? And 2, who selects the CEO or COO, whatever we call it? Is it going to be the SLIB board, or is it going to be selected by the treasurer? It sounds like a substantial change to the statutory duties of the treasurer to accomplish in a budget footnote.
Representative Larson?
The structure of the treasurer's office, since I've been in the legislature in the last 10 years, has been moving more and more from having a management firm running the investments and bringing that in-house. And we've talked about that repeatedly. And so then we've created this investment side of the treasurer's office. One of the things that we study, and to the question of the good representative, how many other states, the majority of the states, as I recall, as we looked at some of this in CAP-FIN, the majority of the states and the majority of the recommendations comes back. There's a document called the Santiago Principle that talks about the best ways for sovereign wealth funds to be invested. And one of the things that they talk about is segregating the influence of politics from the expertise of those who make the investments. And so when you get an investment committee, and we talk about this back room, you've got the administration of the treasurer's office, which is the elected official, as well as us that do that. But there's got to be a line in the sand there that you don't let politics influence the expertise of those of the internal investment committee. And so the COO or CEO that runs that is not normally selected solely by the elected official, whatever that structure may be. In our instance, that in Wyoming, that would be the treasurer, but is approved and selected, recommended by the Internal Investment Funds Committee back to the SLIB, which is the 5 elected officials, of which the treasurer is a member of, but not solely. And so there's a process that goes through that still requires public input, but it's not solely rested upon the decision of one elected official. And keeping that segregation and drawing a line there is really important for the direction that we're going in, making sure that we don't put political influence, or as we see sometimes even in our body, of how things are done, and let those investments be done purely by the expertise that those people that have experience in doing it can do.
Representative Baker.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Just following up on the footnotes that we're discussing, and I appreciate the discussion. I'm just curious as to whether or not there was a discussion with staff as to the possible issues with constitutionality on something like this, because I know that just looking back, the state has done, the legislature has done something similar with a Senate file and another one of those offices. Was there a discussion with staff about if this were to be challenged in the future? Thank you.
Chairman Nicholas.
So thank you, Madam Chairman. So first of all, if you had to go to the Constitution and look at what the responsibilities are of the treasurer. And the Constitution basically says the responsibilities of the treasurer will be established by the legislature. So in that regard, it's completely different from the prior matter that you're referring to. It's really apples and oranges. What this position really is a COO, a Chief Operating Officer. So this is someone who is practiced in the trade of the profession of doing daily trades on the computer and how to manage and operate the back office accounting component of all the work that the investment team is doing. That's the expertise that we lack, and that's what's severely needed if we continue to manage our own investments. We either have to do it or we have to go back and hire professionals to get it done. And it was our consensus opinion, and also the opinion of the Investment Funds Committee, that this person should serve at the pleasure of the SLIB, who is the corporate board, in order to perform the function and perform it in a way that he can speak freely with SLIB and make sure that the process is being honored. And it's the common practice in corporate America, particularly when you have an investment team that has a $20 billion plus in their portfolio. And if you make one mistake, or if you have one person who's not up to snuff, or you have an amazing ability to, if you choose to tamper with what's going on. So the Chief Operating Officer is also kind of the safety officer to monitor everything on how the trades are being made, how they're being audited, how they're being performed. So I think that's about the best answer I can come up with.
Okay, if there's no more, do you have more? Representative Walters.
Thank you. A final follow-up on a different question that was asked. It was about summary notes 2, and thank you, Madam Chair, and summary notes 15. So that was an unfunded vacant position in the administration division. The position has been moved to the investment teams and then reclassified, moving from a principal accountant in administration to a compliance officer within the investment team. And so, and now it will all be paid for out of the investment side of it, so it's all special revenue, as opposed to the general fund that was paying for the previous position earlier. So that, just to answer that question that was asked earlier in the day.
All right, next we have Representative Simpson.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Boy, I'm sure glad my first agency only is asking for one admin person. Madam Chairman, I bring you Section 6, Administration and Information Agency, formerly or conveniently called A&I. Members, I hope that you're on the spreadsheet, the ledger size document. That's what we're working with today. I'm on page 4 of that document. I'm also on page 15 of the bill if you want to cross-reference anything we're talking about. Members, on the left-hand side of that sheet, you'll see a cluster of numbers. Those numbers refer down to the notes below. The notes do not necessarily jive with the footnotes in the bill. They're independent. These notes here are intended to share with you the specific items that we discussed with the agency when they presented their budget to us. So let's start with the first one. Note number 1 is a human resource. You'll notice they had 5 full-time HR people in their agency, and they're given that budget up. I'll tell you where it's going to in a few minutes. Note number 2, the agency asked for a public information officer. The governor recommended approval of that. The JAC, however, denied that request. Note number 3, the agency asked for 1 full-time equivalent position for professional licensing board administration. The governor recommended approval, and we adopted the governor's recommendation. Now, items 4 through 11 are related to general services. Let's start with number 4 and glance down through there. You'll see that we're talking about equipment, state-owned properties. Item 6 is replacing vehicles. Item 7, I'd like to highlight that if I could, please. JAC adopted the governor's rec of $157,000 from the general fund for 1 full-time equivalent position for a capital, that's this building, capital information desk attendant. We think someone needs to be here in the lobby full-time during 8 to 5, and at the same time, we transferred that position to a different section. Items 8, 9, and 10 are things that they need to manage the facilities. I think it's interesting on item 9, the Thyra Thompson building, that's the brand new building in Casper. You'll note that we're anticipating just maintaining and cleaning that building will cost $300,000 per year, times by 2 for the biennium. Item 10, they need another senior electrician. These electricians travel around and share all the buildings and take care of the needs, but the electrical needs are backing up and we're not getting to them, so we need to add an electrician to their staff. Item 11 is for general maintenance. Item 12 is important for you, so let's have a close look at that. That's a $16 million transfer into this department, this agency. The reason is because they pick up 82 full-time equivalent positions from HR. So they gave up 5 people on paper on note number 1, and now they're accepting 82. So as we go through the rest of the budgets in the next 2 days, everybody's given up their HR person, everybody, and they're coming here and their associated dollar amounts to them. It's going to be a wash. All those people are being transferred into this agency, 82 of them in total. So when we gloss over HR, that's what you'll understand exactly where they're going to. Footnote 12. Okay, footnote 13. JAC adopted the governor's rec for $958,000. The IS is important for you to understand. That's agency's internal service fund. So on that line item and 14, we're increasing the spending authority for that internal fund. They both relate to insurances. So on 14, it's anticipated that there will be $776 million in additional health insurance claims. I think people have been saving up their hips and their shoulders and their knees, and they're anticipating a run on the bank at the hospitals. So they have asked for an extra $62 million of increased spending authority of their own funds to cover the anticipated bump there. Item 15, $41,000 of general funds for the REMI model. That's the Economic Analysis Division uses that. That's cost for maintenance agreement. And then the small item on 16 is for pricing survey increases. Madam Chairman, are there any questions for the Administration and Information Agency?
Representative, Representative Larson?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I guess I have a question on the vehicles. I think there is a little note there of how many anticipated for the biennium of 352, I think, replacement. How many total vehicles does the state own, and does that include our fish agency and the highway agency? And then also currently, when are they replaced? Mileage or years or what? Just so we all know.
Representative Simpson?
Thank you for that easy question, Representative. I do not know how many total vehicles we have in the fleet. The 352 are going to be replaced during this biennium. They have a policy and procedures of when they replace the vehicles. Now, these are the pool vehicles that everyone draws from.
Would you like
Could
to
I
phone a
phone
friend?
Yeah, please. I didn't know the proper procedural way to say that.
Representative Walters?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I don't know the total number in the fleet today. These do not include the transportation vehicles, the wildlife vehicles. This is just general service government vehicles. And as to the replacement side of it, they have a very nifty formula, and it's different based on the vehicle. So if it's a 1-ton dually utility type vehicle, the mileage and the years are different than if it's a passenger car, than if it's a SUV. All of these are the types of vehicles that are out there in the motor pool, and they have worked it out to figure out will they get the highest value as in terms of sale and resale, as well as get the maximum mileage out of that. And so it's not a uniform number because it changes based on the type of vehicle being reviewed. So hopefully that helps answer that. And I'll get back with the body on the total number in the pool.
Okay, any more questions? Oh, Representative Banks?
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. Footnote number 2, the public information officer. Do you know what they were planning to do with that person, or why they identified that they needed that person?
Anyone? Representative Simpson?
Madam Chairman, the Director's Office is requesting general fund for the Public Information Officer position. This position was originally in the Accounting Office and funded by the Employees Group Insurance section. When the position was vacated, it was repurposed to the Director's Office for a PIO. Position serves the department as a whole, not just the Employees Group Insurance section, and as such is more appropriately funded by the general fund.
Chairman Nicholas?
Thank you. So I think, if I understand the question right, as we talked about earlier, there's over 7,000 employees, and they're all affected and impacted and have questions that go through A&I for, just about everything, and anything to do with money and paychecks and personnel rules. And so I think it's just to be more responsive to the state employees, to have that person in kind of a lead role.
Anything further? All right, you're up, Representative Schwartz.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I bring you Agency 007, Wyoming Military Department. It is on page 5 of your summary sheet and page 16 of your budget. The first thing I will note, if you look, their total budget is about $75 million. Of that, about 3/4 of it is federal funding. So just to put everything in perspective in this agency, the bulk of the money comes from the federal government. When we look at the notes, if you look at notes 1 through 5, these are all concurrences by the JAC on the Govs Rec. I would be happy to answer questions about them, but for the moment, I will just say we approve the Govs Rec. Going to number 6 and also number 11, because these are linked. And what these do, this is also footnotes 1 and 4.
These are giving the military the authority to hire more employees based on federal funding coming in. So in the case of the Air National Guard, they are authorized to hire 9 more employees if the funding exists, and the Army 13 employees, but there are no general funds associated with this, and it's just a spending authority. Then we look at items 7 through 10, and these are basically old friends. Historically, what we have done with the military is we've said they can use major maintenance funds to pay for their routine maintenance. But what we did, we denied the governor's rec to allow that this time. And if you look at notes 7 and 10, which would be footnotes 2 and 3, we actually appropriated money, $500 general fund, $300 federal funds, to allow them to do routine maintenance, because there was a concern that they are falling behind on that routine maintenance, and we want to make sure it's completed, because if you don't do routine maintenance, you do major maintenance. And that is not preferable. Going on to notes 12 through 14, these relate to the Veterans Memorial Museum. We had worked in the past, we cut some funding because the intent was to have them work out an MOU with state parks to operate the museum. And it turns out that might not have been the best alternative. So we're restoring funding and FTEs to operate that museum. Item 15 relates to the National Guard Museum, and that is just approving a governor's rec. And that sums up the military agency, and I would be happy to answer any questions.
I don't see any, so continue.
Perfect. Moving on. Thank you, Madam Chairman. Moving on to agency number 8, which is the Public Defender's Office. That's on page 6 of the spreadsheet, the summary sheet, page 18 of the budget book. If you look at the notes, right off the bat, we've got note number 1, which includes footnote number 1, and it is actually tied also to note number 4. So what number 1 does, it basically takes $3.5 million and it appropriates it to the 900 series, the contract series. The Public Defender's Office often has a hard time hiring lawyers to work for them directly, but they still have a responsibility to provide defense for all of these cases throughout the state. So sometimes they use contract lawyers instead, which I think works out well for everybody. So footnote 1 allows them to use that money for contract lawyers. And then note number 4 states that even after that, they have the flexibility between their 100 series, which is payroll for their actual employees, their 900 series, which are the contract lawyers, to move the monies back and forth as needed to make sure there are enough lawyers to defend all of the defendants in the state. And I would say the other notes relate to 3 and 5 are regarding capital cases. And one is number 5 allows carryover of existing monies. And number 2, appropriates $500,000. There may not be any capital cases. We hope there are no capital cases. I look at the good chair of judiciary, and perhaps there will never be any more capital cases. But when they do occur, we have a responsibility to provide defense, and it can be extraordinarily expensive, and they are entitled to it. So that's why we're doing that. And having said that, that is Agency 8, and I welcome any questions, maybe.
Minority Floor Leader Conley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Okay, so I'm curious about this money for capital cases. So what we see with the third line with court-ordered capital cases, we see zeros all the way across. And then when we go down to the summary note number 2, we see that there's $500,000 for one-time capital case funding. Okay, but then when you turn to the the budget itself, in section 303B, we've got some carryover money of over $1 million. So I'm curious about how all that works together when, in particular, we have no one on death row. And so it just seems like a lot of money.
Representative Schwartz.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I would not disagree necessarily, but it was the recommendation of the Public Defender's Office that in case a capital case did occur, they would have the adequate funding to provide an adequate defense. And apparently the chairman has more to add.
Chairman Nicholas.
Thank you. So, for example, this summer, one of the prosecuting attorneys in the state had a press release that indicated that they was going to bring a capital case. So the way that it works now, and this is all mandated by federal constitutional law on how you have to, the rights of someone when they're on death row. The moment that a prosecutor articulates that they may charge someone with the death penalty, they go into high gear. Literally, you have to use 2 or 3 specialized lawyers. They get in. They build a team of support behind them, where psychologists, doctors, and other folks, where they start doing background checks. You have to go back and literally, for whoever this defendant may be, you start at birth and you follow them up through their life, and you demonstrate if they were abused, why, their childhood history, where they've been in jail, all those things, because all of those are relevant for the court, and it's mandatory that you do that type of homework every time there's rumor of a case, because if you don't, you're already behind the 8 ball. So, that's just the first step in the process, but just that will probably cost at least $500,000 to do. So they were already gearing up on that case and had spent $200,000 or $300,000 before the case that went away. And so you have to have in hand typically $1 million or $1.5 million bucks to prosecute one of these cases. And that's probably, the cases obviously last years and years typically. And then you have your appeal process, you have the habeas process. And so typically I think the average cost is between 10 and 15 million to prosecute a case all the way through and go through the habeases. So really 1.5 is just the nest egg that we're told is required.
Okay, Representative Walters, go ahead. Oh, sorry, I didn't see you behind there. Representative Washit.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to follow up on that capital punishment, how much money is unexpended remaining in this biennium's allocation? Because it seems to me in the past we've allocated $500,000 for the biennium, and so it sounds like now we're going to have $500,000 plus whatever was unexpended in the present biennium, which means that the total appropriated for capital defense will be higher than it has been in the past.
Representative Schwartz.
Madam Chairman, Representative, I'm sorry, I can't remember your number, from the center part of the state, more or less, from my perspective. Yes, you are correct. There's actually, I'm looking at my budget to get the exact number. It's a little over $1 million is the carryover number. I don't see it right here, but it is higher because there's been carryover and carryover. But as the good chairman was saying, if there is a case, it is becoming exponentially more expensive to defend those cases. And it will, if there are no cases, we will deal with it at the end of the biennium in the next budget.
Representative Provenza.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. So in the footnotes with looking at, they have to hire out contract attorneys or perhaps investigators. Was there discussion about maybe the maximum workload for the Public Defender's Office? So are they working over 100% of what they should be? And what was the conversation around maybe how short-staffed they are and why? I'll start there.
Representative Schwartz?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yes, there were conversations, and they give us the data. I could get it for you. I don't have it. Their lawyers are by and large working over what the association that regulates lawyers, what their recommendations are. I would say it's not excessively over, but they are aware of that, and that is why they ask for that money for contracts to then augment the coverage to relieve those pressures. Does that help?
Representative Provenza, follow up.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairwoman. What was there any conversation of the difference in how much it costs to contract out versus what we pay our public defenders?
Madam Chairman, yes, there was. And fundamentally, the contract costs more because we're hiring private sector lawyers to do the work that arguably public defenders should be paid more. But when you get into the state system and the way we allocate funding to legal positions, A&I has a system, and they are required to pay according to that system.
Representative Stith, did you want to add?
Madam Chairman, on the state agency public defender, the flexibility between the 900 and the 100 series provides for the event that they can't find a person to work full-time, then they can hire contract lawyers. So they give that flexibility. Most agencies don't have that flexibility. This one does. This agency, because we adopted indigency standards, not everybody gets a public defender anymore. So their workload should be going down. And on top of that, in April of 2020, the highest court in our state said that the phrase in our statute that says the public defender shall defend anyone who's indigent, the Supreme Court essentially said that shall means may. And so if they're overworked, the public defender can politely decline to defend them. Strange but true. So they've got, there's plenty of money in this budget. They're fine.
Representative Walters, you're up.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. For the next agency, it's agency number 10, Department of Agriculture. And for an explanation of this, you'll find this on page 7 of your summary sheet and page 19 of the budget bill. And the appropriations, JAC adopted the standard budget and took action on the following exception requests, meeting the chief executive's recommendations for information and technology needs in the agency totaling $143,000. Which are contained in summary notes 1, 5, 9, and 13. And then an additional $7,200 was added for telecommunications. And Madam Chairman, JAC adopted the chief executive's recommendation for human resource consolidation. This amount was a $145,000 reduction, and that is noted in summary note 3. JAC adopted the chief executive's recommendation to restore $50,000 to the Consumer Health Services Program and $85,000 in Technical Services Unit. This is to reverse some action that was taken in the 2020 legislative session that duplicated the reductions in these units. And so really the reductions stay in place, they just aren't duplicated. And those are summary notes 4 and 6. JAC adopted the chief executive's recommendation of $290,000 for the replacement of a scale truck. The truck is one of 4 trucks and used for the purpose of certifying scales around the state of Wyoming. That's summary note 7. JAC adopted the chief executive's recommendation for $70,000 for equipment. The purpose for these needs are related to the inspection of fuel stations, and so it will be to purchase 2 small prover trailers and 1 large prover trailer. Again, summary note 8. And JAC adopted chief executive's recommendation in the analytical services unit for $363,000 for new lab instruments and $24,000, almost $25,000 for lab supplies and maintenance agreements. Summary notes 10 and 11. Additionally, JAC added $300,000 and footnote, which is a budget footnote, number 1 for Wyoming agriculture in the classroom. Summary note 12 discusses that. And then Mr. Madam Chairman, JAC adopted the Chief Executive's recommendation of $300,000 special revenue and $143,000 special revenue. And this is within the spending authority only within the state fair. And the purpose of this, for your note, it's summary notes 14 and 15. But the purpose of this is to improve transparency and reduce the number of B11s that are needed throughout the year. And with that, I would, that wraps up the description. I would answer any questions if there are any for Agency 10, Department of Agriculture.
All right, let's keep moving on. Just as a reminder, we have over 80 agencies to cover in 2 days. So let's keep our pace. Let's speed it up with if we have questions and such, let's keep a pace faster. All right, next, Representative Kinner.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Madam Chairwoman, I bring you Section 11, Department of Revenue, page 8 on your summary sheet and page 20 on your bill. If we look at note number 1 on the summary sheet, that was part of the global HR transfers, and I'm not going to mention that. And then also part of our global motion on IT replacements, that covers note 2, 3, 5, 6, and 10. And so I'm not going to spend much time on those. So skipping over those then, I'm going to move to note number 4, where the JAC adopted the governor's rec of $3,071,000 for contract services related to the excise tax system, which is the mineral tax system. And then let's see, flipping down to number 6, the JAC adopted the governor's rec of $308,000 one time for computer and hardware equipment related to the CAMA system, which we work with all of the counties, and that's the property tax system. Number 7, JAC adopted the governor's rec of $118,000. That was for maintenance for that CAMA system. And then number 8, the JAC adopted the governor's rec of $2.5 million for contract services relating to orthogonal aerial imagery. This is imagery that can be used by the assessors and various agencies, and well, anyone from the state has access to this, as a matter of fact. Item number 9, JAC adopted the governor's rec of $1.4 million in enterprise funds to fund 10 full-time equivalent positions to convert 10 at-will positions or part-time positions to full-time. And I'll just mention this, that you might remember that last year we had quite a situation in the Department of Revenue, in the liquor division, when with COVID, it seemed like more people stayed at home and had adult beverages than they had in the past. And so we actually had to staff this up by 10 people to provide for the amount of orders that were coming into the liquor division. I can't imagine that any of you were responsible for any of that increase. Okay, so item number 11, the JAC, let's see, adopted the governor's rec for one full-time, or excuse me, for one time for shop equipment. And then item 12, note 12, JAC adopted the governor's rec of $45,000 for existing maintenance agreements on equipment. And let's see, item 13, the JAC adopted the governor's rec of $500,000 for temporary employment, and that helped us fill the gap when we were trying to come up with those part-time people. Note number 14, the JAC adopted the governor's rec of $578,000 one time to resurrect the e-liquor system. If any of you have been visited with your the folks who handle liquor and so on, we tried a new liquor system and it really just didn't work. It wasn't quite capable of doing what we thought it would do, and so this is going to provide funding for a replacement system that they will put in place, and it should make things a lot more seamless. Note number 15, let's see, that was we adopted the Gov's rec for $298,000. This is for tips training. This is for alcohol servers. We train the alcohol servers to make sure that they make sure that the folks having adult beverages are of age and so on. And now, item 16 and 17 were part of our global B11 motions, but I think it's large enough so that I should make a note of this, that we actually we adopted the governor's rec of an increase of $100 million for spending authority, enterprise spending authority. And again, that was relating to the purchase of additional alcohol beverages. And so, for example, we had to take that spending limit up from 175 million, 100 million, this 100 million to 275 million. And this will prevent all those B11s that the governor had to make for those increases above what we had approved originally. And then note number 17, $15 million increase. Ladies and gentlemen, that's good news because that increases the amount of revenue that's going to be sent to the general fund. And for that transfer to the general fund, we had to increase that amount so that we weren't constantly having B11s all the time. And Madam Chairwoman, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Representative Yin.
Madam Chairwoman, Representative, I was curious if there was any discussion on the statewide property tax refund program. I know it's something that we cut in a previous budget. Is it a conversation that was had in JAC? Thank you, Madam Chairwoman.
Representative Kinner.
Thank you. Yes, there was, and I think we decided not to make any changes, but there certainly was discussion that could be something that could be considered going forward. Anyone
else in the back of the room there? Representative Larson.
Yes, Madam Chairwoman, thank you. I got a question on number 8, orthogonal aerial imagery. Have we been doing this for a couple years? And is this available for everyone? I think I heard you say for other agencies and also other entities, maybe at the county level?
Representative Kinner.
Yes, let me just look at that page, just a moment, Representative.
Representative Rodriguez-Williams, you want to go ahead and ask your question while he's looking it up?
Sure, thank you, Madam Chairman. Looking at line 15, I was just wondering if there's any discussion in regards to the TIPS program and whether or not there's any additional sources of funding that's used to carry out that program in local communities. Is this basically a supplementing community funds that are already being used through the Department of Health, Substance Abuse and Prevention funding?
Representative Larson.
Okay.
Or Kidder.
So let me jump on the first question from Representative Larson first. So right now we have 250 users of that information, 19 different state agencies, and it's used in various capacities. And let's see, it helps reduce staff field visits, views properties with restricted and difficult access. It can capture undetected taxable properties. It could increase tax revenue because of any changes that might be noted, but also it can be used in various other ways. And so what we're finding is that the county assessors are also happy to have it. And then also, one thing that can be done in the planning process, it can be used to actually complete measurements. Like in a new subdivision, like distances and so on, it can be used for things like that for approximate distances. So it's been found to be very helpful so far.
Representative Larson.
Madam Chairwoman, a follow-up on that, I guess. Is this total dollars that is being spent statewide, or are there other agencies adding to that?
Representative Kinner.
Madam Chairwoman, thank you for that question because of the clarification. This is the rest of the second flight statewide. So this will be the rest of the second flight. And then getting to the TIPS question, that is my knowledge that's the money that we spend. We try to pay for that training for those servers so that it's a consistent training, and so we do provide that.
Representative Larson.
Additionally, on the TIPS training, there was no additional funds requested by the agency to enhance the TIPS training. Whether there would be funds available through mental health and substance abuse grants, I've not seen them do that in the past, but it might be a question worthy of asking the agency, two different agencies that the Department of Revenue administers that, but it might be worth asking if they've ever considered helping to fund that training.
Okay, Representative Kinner, continue.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I bring you section 14, which is the Miners Hospital Board, page 8 on your summary sheet and page 21 of your bill. And Madam Chairwoman, the JAC adopted the governor's recommendations on this, and I wanted to make just a couple of comments about this because you may not know much about the Miners Hospital Board. Well, really, helping our miners began way back at statehood when we became the 44th state back in 1890, and we've tried to help our miners ever since then. But in 2001, we established this board, the Miners Hospital Board, which does provide medical help for miners who are having medical issues. And those areas include hearing, respiratory issues, heart issues, and musculoskeletal issues. And right now we have over 7,000 miners that are registered for the program. And this one was something for me good to refresh on, that the combination of both bills. So basically, what I think in terms of as a foundation to help miners is $110 million, and we can use up to 5% of that each year to help the miners with medical expenses. And our understanding is that it's working fairly well, and maybe not many miners know that this exists, so they work hard at trying to tell miners that this program is available. And Madam Chairwoman, I'd be happy to answer any questions, and if there's no question, that concludes Section 14, Miners Hospital Board.
All right, Representative Stith, you're up.
Madam Chairman, I bring you Agency 15, Attorney General, page 9 on the large crib sheet, and then page 22 of the budget bill. I tend to think of the Attorney General's office as a law firm for the state, but as you look on here, that's really just about a third of the general fund spending and just 20% of its overall budget. It also has our division that does criminal investigations. It has the Law Enforcement Academy and Victim Services, so that comprises it. So what's going on here in the budget? To go through the notes that appear on page 9 of the big sheet here, just to point out a couple of the highlights. Number 1 is probably the most important thing happening here. The Joint Appropriations Committee adopted the executive's recommendation of $434,005 general fund and 1 full-time equivalent position for Colorado River Compact's legal support. So the Colorado River Basin has suffered the worst drought in over 100 years, one of the worst droughts in over 1,200 years. In the year 2026, the management guidelines for the upper basin of the Colorado River system will be up for renewal and renegotiation. So there's going to be lots and lots of legal work. Right now, this agency does not have anybody whose full-time job it is to focus on the Colorado River Basin. And so that's what this would do. This adds a position, strategically very important. Other states in the Colorado River Basin Compact have multiple lawyers in their similar corresponding offices. So that's note 1. Many of these others, note 2 just relates to the human resources centralization. Note 3, some IT replacement. The note 4 is interesting. It also goes along with note 16 and 17. If you look on this long sheet, I think what's really interesting about this, you'll notice there's a kind of lonely in the middle of the page, there's a red number. It's a 1 in parentheses. We've reduced the funding by $1 for what's called the Medical Review Panel. And we can all be proud of that, because what that means is we've eliminated the Medical Review Panel. That was done by legislation last year. We're making government smaller. Now, the Medical Review Panel had a paralegal associated with it. So what happens to that person? That person is being reassigned to help with workers' comp, oil and gas commission, legal efforts and things like that. So what's going on in the budget is you're transferring the funding for the paralegal over to avoid having to do the B11 process. The one lonely footnote here in Agency 15 that's on page 22 of your budget bill, this is $334,000 to add one lawyer and one paralegal to enforce the Medicaid Fairness Act. And the idea is, as you may recall, this program was adopted in, the statute was adopted in 2018. The idea is to have single wealthier fathers pay up to 1/2 of the birth costs that are paid by Medicaid. So this program's not working very well. It's just not working very well at all. And part of the reason it's not working very well is that it's nobody's job to collect from the deadbeat dads. So this would, as an experiment for 2 years, we would have one lawyer and one paralegal to go out and chase down the money. It's estimated about $2 million a year out there. It's been collecting for 4 years. There's $8 million for these people to go collect. Hopefully that'll pay for their salaries. So that's what's going on in that note, in that footnote. What else going on this? You'll see several federal funds relating to lab testing, DNA upgrades, some IT requests. This agency is required under federal privacy regulations to have its own separate servers for criminal history background checks and things like that. Their servers are getting to end of life. Also for the field offices, they have to be able to remotely log in, and the firewalls to ensure the privacy of those criminal history background checks, for example, are at their end of life. So that's another sort of big ticket item showing up here on line note 7. The note 13, they want to undertake a job task analysis for peace officer and detention officer training. The policy is they're supposed to do that every 5 years. The last one for peace officers or detention officers was done in 2008, and the other one was done in 2015. So those studies are getting old, and it's part of being able to evaluate for personnel management to be professional. Note 15 is of some interest. It's only $50,000, but it's to, I apologize, note 14. Note 14 is $55,000 of general fund for increases in administrative hearing costs, and that relates to complaints against peace officers. So if there's a complaint against a peace officer for misconduct, then you have to have an administrative hearing about that. And apparently the number of those is on the increase, and so they've asked for $55,000 to defray the cost of those hearings. And with that, I'll stand for any questions.
Representative Yin.
Madam Chairwoman, Representative, so you said that there was an estimate of about $8 million that we could recover from deadbeat dads. I think that would be a good return on investment, but can you elaborate a little on where that estimate of $8 million comes from? Thank you.
Representative Stiff.
Madam Chairman, to the representative from District 16, great question. The initial analysis for monies available under the Medicaid Fairness Act were done by our statistician inside and data analyst inside the department handles health, Agency 48, and there was an analysis done of, and the $2 million recovery each year was on the kind of the low end of it. In a given year, between 35% and 40% of births in Wyoming are paid for by Title 19 of Medicaid. Our unemployment rate's about 4%, which means we have a lot of employed fathers who aren't paying anything for the births of their children. And the state's spending somewhere around $24 million a year on the Title 19 program for births. So because it's means tested, you can't collect from everybody. The law of poor fathers, we're not trying to collect from poor fathers. So to answer your question, the estimate that I'm using on the $2 million, that estimate was from 4 years ago. So.
Before we get to you, Representative Heiner, can we be reminded to keep our conversations off the floor, please, so that everyone can pay attention in here? Gentlemen, thank you. Representative Heiner.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Representative, there's no one that can say that our JAC is not scrutinizing budgets well enough. With a multi-billion-dollar budget, you found $1 that you could save. That really puts it in perspective. You guys are really scrutinizing these budgets. Appreciate that. But in this procedure, we've moved FTEs in and out, and we're adding FTEs. Could you tell me what our estimated benefit burden is as it relates to salary for the state? I know that's a common number used in industry. Do we have that number for us, what that benefit percentage is?
Representative Stith.
Madam Chairman, Representative, it's my understanding that benefits for a given employee, typically it's about 40% of what we're paying is for benefits. And I think it may be less at the very high end, I believe. So if you're one of the investment advisors getting performance compensation, the percentage might be lower on that, but I think it's typically about 40%. That's not a perfect number, but that's the estimate that was used in calculating this.
Representative Provenza.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. You mentioned that so in footnote 14, there was a request for an increase in these hearing costs, and I'm wondering, as a result of more certification investigations, and I'm wondering if there was conversation about increase for funding for investigation of those hearings.
Representative Stith.
Madam Chairman, to my knowledge, there was no discussion about that.
Okay, Representative Burkhart.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Back to footnote 1. Was there any discussion by the committee on whether that amount is sufficient to defend Wyoming in the upcoming, I'll just call it water wars, because that's what's going to happen. If that was considered a sufficient amount, I know that's what it might be the Gov's rec, but considering what I've heard other states are planning on spending, I have some concerns that we may not be funding that coming battle adequately.
Representative Stith.
Madam Chairman, to answer the question, we accepted the agencies and the governor's recommendation on that, but that's a great question because there will be water wars.
Okay, Representative Larson, you're up.
I'll turn my speaker on. Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'd like to take a minute with you and talk about Section 20, Department of Environmental Quality. This is found on page 10 of your status report and page 23 and 24 of your budget bill. I'd just like to note that JAC adopted all of Gov's recs and didn't make any additional changes to the agency's budget. I'd also like to just have you note that 70% of the agency's budget is from federal funds, 12% from fees collected from industry, and 18% general funds. Note 1, we take on the summary sheet, we take care of the HR. In notes 2, 3, 4, and 7, we do IT upgrades. In note 5, we add one new position in air quality. And the reason for this is to help analyze and provide comments on this current administration's implementation of its spring regulatory agenda, which lists 70 new air quality rules. Compare that with in 2020 when we had 3 new rules. This exercise, it will be essential to maintain primacy, help develop federal rules, and then to adopt our state rules. And then in 6, on note 6, we authorize one more position in Air Quality Division to monitor wildfires and other exceptional events. And this is to develop an exceptional event file. As the EPA makes standards more stringent, data collection is critical to show what part exceptional events such as fires played in air quality. If we're not able to track those events, the EPA could assume that the increase in the degradation of air quality is the fault of industry. An example of such impacts might be regional haze. And Madam Chairman, I'd answer any questions if there are any.
Okay, moving on. Representative Kinner.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Ladies and gentlemen, I bring you Section 21, which is the Department of Audit, page 11 on your summary sheet and page 24 of your bill. Item number 1, note number 1, is part of the human resource global motion, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that. And then items 2, 3, 4, 6, and 9 are part of the global IT motion. Now, item number 5, the JAC adopted the governor's rec of $15,000, which provided accreditation training for the Bank Secrecy Act. Item number 7, note 7, we adopted the governor's rec of $195,000 one time for the statewide audit contract for the next biennium. Item number 8, we adopted the governor's rec to reduce one unfunded full-time person, so that's a reduction in the department. And let's see, Madam Chairwoman, that concludes all of the items I was going to go over. I'd be happy to answer any questions on the Department of Audit. If none,
All
that
right.
concludes.
Representative Walters.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Your next agency is Agency 23, the Public Service Commission. For an explanation of this, you will find the Public Service Commission, or the PSC, on your summary sheet on page 11 or your budget bill on page 24. And the PSC agency consists of the PSC, Public Service Commission, and the Office of the Consumer Advocate. The role of the PSC is to protect the public interest in its interactions with public utilities providing service in Wyoming. The role requires balancing the interests of the Wyoming utility consumers with the financial interests of the utilities. The Office of the Consumer Advocate is an independent division within the PSC whose statutory mission is to represent the interests of the Wyoming citizens and all classes of utility customers in matters involving public utilities. The PSC is a self-funded agency receiving revenue through an assessment on gross intrastate retail revenues of all entities subject to the assessment pursuant to Statute 37-2107. The JAC adopted the Chief Executive's recommendations to a standard budget, authorizing 37 positions and no increases in this budget. Any questions?
Okay, Representative Schwartz, you're up.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. So the next agency is number 24, State Parks and Cultural Resources. It's on page 12 of your summary sheet and on page 25 of your budget. If we look at this, we'll start, the first one that needs to be attended to is number 2. We've added a footnote number 1 to allow expenditure to support the Annals of Wyoming. I know there's at least one member of this body that takes great pleasure in the Annals. I believe he might even own a copy of 1 year. But what this book does, it basically sums up everything that happened in this wonderful state and puts it in a book so it is available for posterity. I too believe it's actually a very good thing. Moving on, numbers 3, 5, and 6 are related. So number 3, we denied the governor's letter number 17, authorizing $125,000 for the humanities. But instead, what the committee did was actually appropriate $400,000, $100,000 of which is for the We the People program. I hope you all are aware of it. It is a terrific program for our school kids. And the other $300,000 is for matching funds for humanities. Moving on number 7, the JAC added $10,000 for the Centennial Farm and Ranch program, which is a program that it honors multi-generational ranches and farms in our state. Numbers 8, 12, 13, 14, 17, and 22. I'm only highlighting that we adopted the recs. What these are, and this is all over the budget, it's providing spending authority to the agency for funds that in the past they have been using the B11 process. And the assumption is that giving them the spending authority is far more transparent than using B11s. Number 9, we adopted the Gov's rec. I'm just highlighting it as for the state archaeologist. It's a little complicated because this is work that is done in conjunction with the University of Wyoming, but it is critical, it's statutorily required. They do a wonderful job, and we needed to ensure that those works continue. So I would be happy to answer more questions on that later. Number 11, the governor requested $10,000 for a deposit to the corpus of the Cultural Trust Fund. The recommendation of the committee was $2.5 million. Moving on, and now we get to the more complicated ones. It's numbers 3, 19, and 20. And this is related to the Office of Outdoor Recreation. And initially, the governor had a letter recommending $30 million. And then there was a proposal for $2 million is what we did. And then we stipulated in the footnote that of that $2 million, and what made this complicated, this is a collaborative venture between the Wyoming Office of Tourism and state parks. So of that $2 million, which will come from the Office of Tourism, $300,000 will go essentially to the park for operational, and the remaining $1.7 million is funding for their grants program. And then in the footnote, it suggests that in the next biennium, we actually create units in the budgets of the Parks Department and Wyoming Tourism to recognize that distinction. And other than that, we have adopted the Gov's Rec, and I welcome any questions.
Representative Brown.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Just a quick question. Going back to the footnote number 5 here, or I'm sorry, footnote number 2, but number 5 on the summary sheet here about the We the People program. I guess I'm just a little confused, and if I could get a little bit more explanation as to what State Parks is getting $100,000 for to help supplement this, because I know that the school districts also put in a lot of money, and also so does the Department of Education. And so I just want to make sure that we're not interweaving a whole bunch of extra different sources on this program, and we don't know which hand is actually paying for what and where things are coming from. So if I could get a little more explanation as to what that $100,000 goes to, I'd appreciate it. Thanks.
Representative Schwartz.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. So, and it appears perhaps you know things about this I don't. I was not aware of the Department of Education actual funding, but I do know that what this does is to support but not pay to the university who administers the program. And this is a support to their operations to implement We the People.
Okay, Representative Larson, you're up. Sorry, I didn't see you, Representative Newsom.
I was hiding over here. Thank you, Madam Chairman. Representative Schwartz, can you go over that again, the Office of Tourism funding with state parks and that, how that works?
Representative Schwartz.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. So what is happening? There will be $2 million allocated from the project account with the Wyoming Office of Tourism. There's that 80-20 split in their funding. And that goes to this collaborative effort. And then of that $2 million, $300,000 will be used by parks to do the operational side to manage the programs, but and doing the granting, but the funding for the granting will be coming from the Office of Tourism. Does that help?
Representative Newsom.
Madam Chairman, thank you. And then the 1.7 goes to the grant fund, the grant program itself. Is that correct? Thank you.
Madam Chairman? Yes, yes, the 1.7 million then is the grant funding.
All right, Representative Washit.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question is to line 15, the annual license support. What type of licenses are we supporting there?
Madam Chairman, Representative, that's for their digital archives. It's a software system. It's the annual licensing to keep their archives.
Any further questions? All right, Representative Hallinan.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I have a question on cultural resources. On that, it shows that the JAC cut that expenditure by $6 million. But then on item number 6 of this general fund appropriation, $2,500,000 shall be deposited into the corpus of the Wyoming Cultural Trust Fund. So where does this $6 million cuts, where does that show up on the budget? I don't see how it could be when we're adding $2.5 million to that one section, and yet the JAC says they're cutting that part of the budget by $6,900,000. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Representative Schwartz.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. So the cut originally was actually 7.5 million. And what I'm looking at, because I don't remember, but we obviously added money back in to reduce that 7.5 to 7. And I apologize. I will have to get back to you on what we added in.
Anyone else? Okay, now Representative Larson, it's your turn.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'd like to reinforce Section 27, the State Construction Department. That's found on page 13 of your status report and page 27 of the budget bill. In the Construction Management Division, there are no changes to the governor's rec. There are 2 footnotes in this. One is on the construction side, one is on the school facility side. Footnote number 11 on your bill adds $1 million in on page 28 of your budget bill to provide an acoustic study. I can't imagine that in this room or in the JAC room or the other rooms that we have, in trying to get rid of some of the echoing and get some of this taken care of, as well as to resolve other problems but remedies haven't been taken care of since we moved back into the Capitol and under the tunnel over and under the Herschler building. Item footnote 2 in here is to take care of effective immediately a school assessment program. We haven't done our school assessment since 2016, and this is necessary so that they can make their assessments on major maintenance and conditions and things of that nature. Madam Chairman, the rest of the items, notes number 1 through 9, will be explained tomorrow in the Section 300s and part of Section 313. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Representative Flitner.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and I'd like to just be curious of the $1 million appropriation for the study and implementation. Any idea what cost is for study versus implementation?
We do not.
Larson?
Bottom line, so this, we've heard back from staff, and we've approached this before a little bit, and there are 2 or 3 different proposals on how we can solve the echoing problem, placement of material, but then there's objections to that because they don't want to mark up the wall. If you go up in, there's some other conditions there down there on lighting and some other things, but we don't have all of the recommendations at this time.
Anything further? All right, Representative Simpson.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I bring to you Section 29, Wyoming Water Development Office, found on page 13 of your summary sheet, on page 29 of your bill. Members, this department had no exception requests, no notes, and no footnotes. You might suggest they are a lean, clean working machine. The reason I point this out is because in the next few days, I'll be bringing quite a few water-related bills in front of you, and I just wanted to make sure that you recognize how clean this department is working. Madam Chairman, unless there's any questions, I'll proceed.
Okay, go ahead.
Madam Chairman, I'm going to bring you section 37, State Engineer's Office. Found on page
Just a moment, Representative Simpson, just so everybody knows, we're skipping over the agency boards, so you're going to have to skip way ahead. So we're on number 37, State Engineer. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Page 14 on your summary sheet, and page 29 in the bill. So I'm looking on page 14 down at the notes. The first note is HR. The second note is a slight salary adjustment issue that was cleaned up. So footnote number 3 is important for you to understand. During the budget cuts last year, the deputy engineer was filling a vacancy in one of the departments. And so basically that position was available. The engineer made the decision to eliminate the deputy engineer from his department. And that was a significant savings, cost savings. However, 6 months later, for personal reasons, it was necessary for him to resign. So the state engineer is resigned and there is no deputy engineer. It puts us in a really, really bad place. The chief executive had to reach across and grab another licensed professional engineer from another agency, bring him across to temporarily fill the spot. But the challenge here is that the river basin compact issues we're dealing with are significant and severe, and we cannot get by without a deputy engineer. So this footnote 3 restores that position. Note number 4 is a full-time equivalent position. You notice the title there, to assist with the Western Wyoming Water Initiative. Let me describe to you what another title of that might be. It's called the Colorado River Compact Drought Challenge. You've begin to hear stories about what's going on in the Colorado River. There is going to be some serious challenges there. We have got to start staffing up to prepare for the potential litigations that are going to come out of that challenge. This particular footnote hires an individual to be located in Green River, and that'll be boots on the ground gathering data to prepare for the challenges that we're going to have going forward. This is a really critical addition to the state engineer's office. Madam Chairwoman, are there any questions?
Okay, I'm not seeing any, so we'll move on to Representative Schwartz, number 39.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. My apologies. Agency 39 is the Wildlife Natural Resource Trust, page 14 on your summary sheet, page 30 in your budget. It's fairly simple. Basically, they get their money from the income from the corpus of the Wildlife Natural Trust Resource Fund. So what we have in here is, you see, we adopted all of the Gov's Rec and Gov letters. That the first one is authorizing them to spend the income from the corpus rather than using a B11. Then more interestingly, number 3, we have adopted the governor's letter to allocate $10 million of general fund money for wildlife crossings. Those monies will be used to get a 4-to-1 match with the federal government, as our chairman referenced in his opening remarks. And then the last one is the most wonderful one, because we are allocating $75 million to go in the corpus so that we will have ongoing funding to provide for the valuable grant program that this agency enacts. And having said that, I welcome it.
I don't see any, so please continue. Number 40, Game and Fish, that's you?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I was not anticipating this one. Number 40, Game and Fish, is not in our summary sheet because Game and Fish is not generally funded. At another time, if you have questions, contact me. I did not come with that information in hand.
Okay, Representative Simpson, number 41, Fire Prevention and Electric Safety.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I bring to you Fire Prevention and Electrical Safety, Agency 41, located on page 15 of your summary sheet and page 31 of your bill. Folks, this agency only has one note, and it's an HR transfer, so really of no significance. There is something important that you need to know about this agency, however. Last year, as part of the budget cuts, they agreed to cut back a significant amount of their revenue from the general fund, anticipating that they would raise their rates for inspections and for plan reviews. And so that's the way they moved forward. That bill was in front of us last week. It was necessary for them to sustain and to pay for their services, and that failed to pass the introductory vote. Now, they have enough money in their account to operate this coming year, but be prepared, next year we need to address this. We're operating off of a fee schedule that is really, really old. They're just charging pennies on the dollar to make an inspection fee, electrical inspection fee, and to manage the incoming plans and specifications they're reviewing. And next year we need to make an adjustment for them so they're not upside down, or else otherwise put them back on the general fund, one of the two. Thank you, Madam Chairwoman.
Okay, Representative Schwartz.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman, and I am now ready to actually bring you agency number 42, the Geological Survey. It's on page 15 of your summary sheet, page 32 of your budget. They have 5 notes. They are all adopting the governor's recommendations. What we are doing here, we are bringing back one of their full-time employees, an economic geologist, and then authorizing money for special projects, for also using federal grants to do airborne geophysical data mapping, fundamentally to look for minerals and rare earths in Wyoming. And I would happily answer any questions.
All right, Representative Kinner, you're up next. Insurance.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I bring you Section 44 of the Insurance Department, found on page 16 of your summary sheet and page 33 of your bill. Ladies and gentlemen, we just had those two notes there. The first one was ETS. The second one was also related with electronic work paper. Ladies and gentlemen, this is all special revenue generated that pays for this department, that regulates about 1,200 insurance companies with only 26 employees. And ladies and gentlemen, I know you'll be happy to hear that we have the smallest insurance department of any state. Ladies and gentlemen, I would answer any questions. If not, I would turn it over to the next presenter.
I'm not seeing anyone, so Representative Simpson, you're back up.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. So I bring to you Agency 45, Department of Transportation, found on page 16 of your summary sheet and on page 35 of your bill. Folks, we've got quite a list of notes here, and so we're going to try to get through them as quickly as we can. The first 2 are IT, and so we'll skip over those. The third item is $80,000. Now, S7, that's important for you to understand. S7 is the highway fund. The Department of Transportation does not take money out of the general fund, so they have their own funds. So $80,000 for driver license systems maintenance and programming changes. Note 4 $80,000 for ongoing support and maintenance of the automated knowledge and skills testing system. Item 5 is HR. Item 6 is $377,000 for an increase in mainframe usage. Item 7 is significant. So let's talk about note number 7 now. So this is a $20,000 authorization to use S7 funds one time for the Revenue Information System, RIS, is what we call it. Now, I would ask you to drop back a page. Would you please drop back to page 16? And you'll see right in the middle of the page there some red numbers, 9.9 million. So this is, and then right above it, you'll see the 20 million that we just talked about. So here's what we accomplished. We used 9.9 million from ARPA and contract renegotiations, and was able to take that from the WyoLink and push that up to help fund the 20 million for RIS. We hoped there would be more there and we could get all of 20 million funded with just being a wash. But so of the 20 million, we want you to understand that only 10 million is new money since we tried saving the other 9.9 to offset it. Okay, we're going to go back to page 17. So items 8 through 20 are all in the law enforcement department of WYDOT. We'll glance down through there. They need more cloud storage for body-worn cameras. They need more money for computer-aided dispatch. They need more money for portable radio replacements. They needed more money for hosting and managing services related to public safety. 12 is noteworthy. JAC adopted the governor's rec and added footnote number 2 to provide authorization for the agency to expend up to $523,000 of the highway funds for the capital security personnel contract. What this does, it provides them the flexibility to use contract services here at the Capitol building for non-critical days and hours, such as nighttime services. Items 13 through 18 are all about the highway patrolman cars, radios, printers. Item 17 is new radar detection devices. That the old units are really old and worn out. All those things are needed for highway patrolman cars. Line item 19 is IT, so we'll skip that one. 20 is a negative 45,000 from the SR to match expenditures with revenues for hazardous waste. We're receiving a lot less hazardous waste being transported through our state. And so, and that's a match number with federal. And so we just simply need to budget less because we're not experienced that as much as we could in the past. 21 is a Quantar replacement system. 22 is for DC power system. 23 is WyoLink site expansions and upgrades. 24 is for 2 brand new WyoLink locations, new towers. And 25 is significant. That's for WyoLink system maintenance. See the parenthesis there? Our people did a really good job of negotiating down the support for the WyoLink system contract. We're pleased with them. You'll notice over on that same line on 25, we talk about 4.1 million from S4, that's local government capital construction account. And we footnoted that we want them to continue to use those funds rather than charge local governments for the use of WyoLink. as long as the budget will hold out. And 26 is an IT items. Madam Chairwoman, that concludes the Department of Transportation.
Representative Baker.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. My question is in relation to the summary note number 7 and the RIS and the infusion of the additional 10,092,000. If you'll refresh my memory, I thought we increased license fees to cover the computer system. I just renewed my license and paid an additional $5. So I'm wondering, why are we using this additional money?
Representative Simpson.
I don't know the answer to that. Sorry. Perhaps my colleagues do. My colleagues are drawing a blank. We're going to have to get back to you.
Chairman Nicholas.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. So the problem is that the license fee increase I don't think it passed all the way through, but or if it did, I can tell you this: that whatever was going to be raised was a drop in the bucket compared to the cost of the Wyoming systems. So the it was like a pinch of salt on the steak.
Anyone else? Representative Flitner.
Madam Chairman, thank you. A couple questions. I don't understand what Quantar is. So if you could tell me what Quantar is and what it's used for. Also, with regard to the WildLink towers, I was curious where they would be located and if the easements were in place, so everything's ready for those to be put in play, or do you anticipate further costs associated with those?
Who would like to take that? Representative Simpson.
I would be happy to. The replacement of the Quantar to the GTR base station radios will not only keep WildLink operational in the future, but will also allow the system and end users to take advantage of new technologies. These base station radios are essential to the operation of WildLink in providing city, county, and state interoperability radio coverage.
Okay. Representative Rodriguez-Williams.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Looking at line 20, I was just wondering if I can get some clarification in regards to hazardous waste transportation. You mentioned that lines 8 through 20 were specific to law enforcement, and I'm just curious if that includes large amounts of seizures when it comes to drug seizures.
Representative Simpson.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Okay, the way it was explained to us is, so we charge a fee when a semi comes across the state of Wyoming with radioactive material, we charge a fee. And for whatever reason, they're choosing a different route and going around Wyoming. And so we are simply not generating that revenue and the federal funds that match it as well.
Minority Floor Leader.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Okay, I have a question on the notes regarding WyoLink. So I think it is, from 21 down? And I don't even know how to ask this question. I thought we were done with WyoLink. Seriously, I thought we were done. I thought there was a promise. I thought you promised us that we were done. There's millions in here. I think I'll put a question mark on the end of that. Please, a little bit more information.
Representative Simpson.
I'm going to need help from my colleagues. We rely on WyoLink in a big way all over the entire state. We can't just say we're done and just quit it. We have to continue to service it. It's an important communication system for our state and our local governments.
Representative Williams?
Privilege of the floor.
Please proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I'd like to recognize a very dedicated, selfless public servant who serves Niobrara County with competence and class, Niobrara County Clerk Becky Freeman. Madam Chairman,
Please proceed.
privilege of the floor.
Please proceed.
Just to allow you a little more time to let some blood flow into your feet, I'd also like to recognize that a very important and dedicated worker in our part of the country. I also have my clerk, Linda Fritz, here. So if you guys wouldn't mind, recognize her. Thank you.
Representative Baker?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. While we're all up, I just wanted to remind everybody that the Realtors reception is tonight. So if you're available and you're interested, feel free to go out to the Little America from 5:30 to 8:30 and join us. Thanks.
Okay, are we ready? Representative Washut?
A question for a good representative from the Appropriations Committee. On the WyoLink, how much did we get in terms of dollars from the license fee increase? And what's the difference between what we took in on license fees and the total expenditures that we need to expend to keep WyoLink operational?
Representative Simpson?
I don't know the answer to that.
Representative Larson?
We didn't get that, Representative. It's a great question. We'll get you that information, but we didn't discuss that differential and what that change made.
Okay, are we ready to move on? All right, Representative Larson, you're up. Department of Health.
Okay, here we are in Department of Health. This reminds me a little bit. I've got two little granddaughters, Annabelle and Amelia Ruth, that like to dance. They go to these dance classes and they're about 4 or 5 years old, and then you go watch them in their little performances. And when you go there, you see people looking just about like you're looking right now. And they get out there and they do their little things, you know. And it's a performance of a lifetime. And when they come up to you and look in your eyes, you tell them, gee, what a wonderful job they've done. And you can't get out of there fast enough. And that's the way I feel. I feel like Annabelle and little Amelia Ruth. You guys are very kind to us. And we appreciate you not laughing at our pirouettes and our little dances and as we try to do the splits. But we have, like them, worked really hard in preparing this. And it may be a little boring to you. We were excited all night to get up here and do this performance to you and for you. And we know that it's a little tough, but we've been living this for a while. So the Department of Health, Madam Chairman, is found on page 18 and 19 of your status report and page 36 to 41 of your bill. This agency is 35% of the total state general fund budget, just shy of $1 billion a year. 90%, this is important, of that $1 billion, 90% of this goes out in services to the citizens of the state. This is a particularly important budget for a state in both terms of size and services provided to all of our constituents. In my years of presenting this agency's budget, there are generally a fair number of questions from you on the funding of the various programs provided by the agency. You'll recall last year we implemented several Step 2 and Step 3 reductions, and as well we restored a Step 2 reduction and several of the Step 3 reductions to services we felt were essential to the citizens of the state. Those reductions were only restored for the year. This year we restore those again, and so you'll see them in the presentation and the actions by the governor that we've funded those. This budget, as big as it is, remained fairly flat, and I think it's the easiest one of my years on this committee to explain. In the committee and in the Department of Corrections budget, we're able to use a significant amount of ARPA dollars for service in this biennium that historically were, and again in the future will be funded by general funds. If you'll look on your summary sheet, on the table of numbers, in the second to the end column on the far right up here, you're going to see $71 million of ARPA used in the Behavioral Health Division, and in the Aging Division, another $11 million. Those replaced general fund dollars were freed up. And so when we talk about ARPA conserved dollars, that's kind of how that mechanism worked. On note 1, right up there at the top of the summary sheet, JAC adopts Governor's Letter number 1. And folks, this, and I really apologize, but it's kind of important for you to understand the mechanism on how the funding on this works. And so I'm going to explain this Governor's Letter number 1 a little bit, which is key to understanding. There are 3 important components, in my opinion, of this letter. You'll recall last year, in anticipation of all the construction at the State Hospital and the Life Resource Center that would be completed, we allowed the Department of Health to carry over residual, unobligated, and unexpended general funds to cover the new staffing requirements of the facility. The ability for the department to fully implement the staffing plan at both facilities was delayed. The first component of this letter is to allow the department to continue to carry over those funds from fiscal year 2019 to implement the staffing at the new facilities. That's about $20 million. The second thing is the governor recommends restoring funds for this biennium exactly as we did last year to the Step 3 reduction to the Children's Mental Health Waiver and Care Management Entity, shown in note 15 on the summary sheet, and as well Step 3 reductions to home and community-based services, and Step 2 reduction in the comprehensive waiver, shown on the summary sheet on notes 20 and 21. The governor, the third component of his letter is the governor authorizes the Department of Health to use the anticipated $80 million in reversions from 2019 up through 2023 to fund the restorations I just mentioned, and to fund as much as possible the approved exceptions in the Department of Health budget, including unanticipated 2023-24 expenditures, such as Medicaid enrollment cost following the expiration of the public health emergency, the annual Medicaid prescription and dual enrollment clawback, potential growth in Title 25, and funding the skilled nursing facility as it starts up. You could ask, how does one agency get $80 million in reversions? And this is important for you to remember, because you're going to say, well, how did we allow them to do that? In the public health emergency related to COVID, there was an enhanced 6.8% FMAP. So our FMAP rating, when we reimburse for Medicaid, is 50-50. For every dollar, they provide a dollar. They increased their portion 6.8%, so it's 56.8%. And so then that freed up those general fund dollars, that component of that, and it stayed in the budget. And for the duration of the public health emergency. And that is expected to end, or could possibly end in June of this year. And then the third component for the carryover and for the increased number, in my opinion, is on the superb fiscal management and spending restraint on part of the agency. But as they've carried the enrollment into Medicaid from the public health emergency, there just hasn't been that much, and there's been a number of other things. So they anticipate reversions being about 80 million, 60 plus the 20 we carry over from last year, which allows them to help us do to fund the exception request for the next biennium. We're going to cover this again in section 309. Notes on your summary sheet, notes 3, 7, 8, and 10 adopts the governor's rec for IT systems. Notes 4, 24, 29, 39, 48, and 49 is the HR consolidation. Note 5 on the summary sheet and footnote 1 on page 36 of the budget bill is once again giving authority for the state Medicaid plan to adopt an upper payment limit program to enhance Medicaid reimbursement for hospitals. We put that in every year for hospitals. The others we have in statute. Chairman Wilson, this could be a good bill, and we wouldn't have to do that every year. Note 6 of the summary sheet, we had footnote 2 found on page 37 of the budget bill, which authorizes adjustments to the state Social Security payments to comply with federal requirements. We do that every year. Note 9 makes technical correction for changing the funding at an at-will employee in the pharmacy program for the medical donations. Note 11 on the summary sheet adopts a Gov's rec to establish a new upper payment limit program for emergency medical services. So now we'll have them in hospitals, nursing homes, and EMS, and allows those institutions to enhance the state's portion of Medicaid to capture more of the federal funds. On note 12 of the summary sheet, we adopt Gov's recs to approve a match and the restoration of step 3 reductions that would have imposed a 2.5% reduction to providers like Indian Health Service and federally qualified medical centers. They had previously taken a 2.5% in step 2 and a 3.3 reduction in 17-18, and we just felt that the step 3 reduction was too much. On notes 13, 18, 27, 37, 40, 45, or 44, 45, and 46 are the B11 cleanups that you've heard in other agencies. Note 14 is a technical correction on the source of funding that for the Medicaid qualified services in K-12. We take some school foundation money to cover the state's portion of the Medicaid FMAP. Note 16 of the summary sheet is important because it changes the source of funding from federal funds to general funds. So when you have a child that is court ordered to be placed under the jurisdiction of the Department of Family Services in a regional treatment facility, an RTC, the Department of Health is required to pay for the medical service the individual receives while there. When the child is put in DFS care, they're put on Medicaid, and hence Medicaid historically has reimbursed the RTCs for those services, those medical services. With a recent change in federal programs, RTCs are strictly defined as institution of mental diseases, which are not allowed to submit for Medicaid reimbursement. So then the Department of Health has to fund those now with general fund dollars. On note 17 of the summary sheet, JAC denied the governor's recs and approved the Department of Health's exception request to increase the rebasing on long-term care, the nursing homes, up to 84% of cost care. In note 19, we approved the governor's rec for authority to use federal funds for the step 3 reduction for vision and dental services in long-term care, and on the DD waivers, the general fund portion will come from reversions that we talked about earlier. Note 12 in the summary sheet approved $17.5 million federal funds to match general funds that we saved from the 10% Medicaid enhancement last year for home and community-based services. Until we take those two, that 17.5 and 17.5 get 35, and that's what the department will use to largely fund the DD providers rebasing for the biennium. Probably need a little help in there on some enhancing that a little more. On note 23 of the summary sheet, the JAC adopts the governor's rec to authorize federal funds associated, well, 23 and 25 allows the use of federal funds for a federally required COVID-19 programs in the Department of, in the Public Health Division. On note 26, is for contracts for guardianship services at the state hospital and the Life Resource Center for people who are incapacitated and do not have a guardian. 28 and 38 approved funds from the land trust associated with the state hospital and Life Resource Center to those respective facilities for purchases of O&M equipment. Could be kitchen equipment, could be wheelchairs, beds, things of that nature. Notes 30, 32, 33, 34, and footnote 3 found on page 37 and 38 of the budget bill. The JAC added back $15 million. This is an important one I think you guys have been asking for. We add back $15 million to outpatient and residential mental health and substance abuse units. These services are provided by the community mental health centers around the state. On note 31 of the summary sheet, we authorized $7.5 million tobacco funds for substance abuse programs immediately in case those programs should, some of them are anticipated to run a little shy before the end of this fiscal year. Note 35, we adopt school foundation funds to meet the maintenance of effort in our DD preschools for the Part B 619 services under IDEA, Individual with Developmentally Education Act, Developmental Disability Education Act. Note 36 denies the governor's rec to fund the DD preschool ECA for $1,098,000, which would account for the most recent year and not the cumulative amounts for the other years for the ECA was not paid. In the Department of Aging, notes 41 and 42 deal with Wyoming Home Services. This is kind of a hot topic in both parts of the body, so let me tell you how we do that this year. We fund the first, so community home services are in 13 or 14 of our counties, and it's used differently. There's the argument, and I think that it's proof that it helps keep people out of nursing homes, but we don't have any data to support which programs work the best. And so what we've asked is twofold. We fund the first portion, the first half, the first biennium, and we've asked the Department of Health to reach out to those counties or communities that are using this and develop some deliverables so we can see what does work and so that we can implement that statewide next year when we look at approving the second year of the biennium. Now, there was one other request in here for $2.7 million, which would have reimbursed the Department of Health for providing those funds for Wyoming Home Services in the current biennium or the current fiscal year we're in. That had been cut in a step 2 reduction, and we're just requiring the department to absorb that. That's what we've done there. So when you look at your budget and you see, oh my heavens, they've taken $5.4 million out of Wyoming Home Services. No, we just removed the second year, so that'll come around, and then the second half of that is the part that we didn't reimburse. So we're funding it the first year, we'll come back and fund the second year. So don't panic, don't let your senior citizen centers panic. Okay. And then the second part of that is we're requiring, or third or fourth part, whatever it was, we're requiring the Department of Health to enter into conversation with Center for Medicaid Services to see if this wouldn't qualify for a waiver. That would then help fund that further along in the future. In note 43, we further authorize and direct in footnote 6 found on page 40, I talked about that, I apologize. Finally, in note 47 of the summary sheet, we create footnotes 7 and 8 found on page 41 of the budget bill. And that's where we adopt the governor's rec to fund the startup costs associated with this veteran skilled nursing facility. And if for some reason there's not enough reversion funds from the department to cover it. And then it also authorizes, as we talked earlier, 35 full-time positions for the Veterans Home Skilled Nursing Facility. And just to note that once the veterans home, so once it starts, it's got to be staffed. First person comes in, it's not enough to cover the costs of the staff that's there. So the state kind of covers that. But then once that gets up and running, that'll be a neutral revenue neutral because the Veterans Administration and patient reimbursements. And I would also just suggest, because there will be a conversation in the CAPCON bill about the Veterans Domiciliary in Buffalo. That's an assisted living facility that we go back to 2014, realizing that needed to be rebuilt. Don't confuse that with the skilled nursing home that's in the budget, okay? Skilled nursing facilities hire more acute patients than the assisted living. So we've conquered that, and now we're going to come back and conquer this domiciliary. Okay, wasn't that fun?
Minority Floor Leader, did you have some questions? You were patiently waiting for so long. And then we'll come back to Representative Larson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The good appropriations member, he was on really a roll and we didn't want to interrupt him. But I do have several questions. So one of them would be on the SSI.
And Madam Chairman, Madam Minority Floor Leader, could you just give them to me one time? When I get done answering, we'll go to the next because I can't.
Okay. Thank you. So thank you, Madam Chair. And so the first question is on the footnote regarding the SSI payments. And if you could give us a little bit more information. My understanding of those who are on the state supplemental income or SSI are those with disabilities, unable to work, and have been for most of their lives. And so I'm curious if you had any discussion about this footnote that says that the amount that they can get should be at the lowest permissible level without reducing federal funds. I'm just curious if you had discussions about poverty, homelessness, the hunger initiative in relation to this particular population, when it's possible that they might be able to be more self-sustaining. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yep.
Representative Larson.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. And so I'd like to take you back to last year when we were doing the step 2 and step 3 cuts. That was in the budget to be completely eliminated. Come back and found out that it would jeopardize those same individuals' ability to get the federal SSI. And so what we've done there is we maintain the state Social Security, which never has been a lot of money, but we maintain it at levels to make sure that we don't lose the ability lose the federal amount. Could that be raised? Yes, it could be raised as high as the sky, but we have historically kept that at the minimum levels.
Follow up, Minority Floor Leader.
Thank you, Madam Chair. At this point, I'll just ask one more. And I'm curious about why you denied the governor's rec for an ECA to the preschool workers at DD centers when we're having an ECA for executive branch employees.
Short answer is we're mean. But would just help the committee, the body to understand that in our community development centers that take care of our kids from birth up to age 5, there's 2 components of IDA that come in there. There's Part C, 0 to 3, or 0 up to 3, and then the Part B, which is the 3 to 5. Now, this Part B goes clear in and becomes part of the Department of Education, special education, and goes up through age 21, and that's why we brought in some of those school dollars to help cover part of that ECA. Now, if you look in statutes and you get into the CDCs and those kids that have developmental delays that are authorized to receive services, those services include the same things that you would get if you had an IEP in school. So it'd be physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy, those types of services that would come. And because they then are competing with the school district, each year that the school district gets an ECA, the following year, the department is required to submit a request for an ECA to us. We have approved those at times, and other times we have not approved them. We had, if you'll recall, maybe minority, or what's been 3-4 years ago, we had a management audit committee report that come back that said those will continue to, they don't just go away. So if we turn them down, the next time you have to consider that they're still there. They're haunting you. It's kind of like Fireman A or the West Side Stands. They're not going to go away. And how you choose to fund them is up to the appropriations, and we elected not to, with the other funds that were there, not to fund this. In what he had requested was to fund, I think, 1.x million for that previous year. That's the explanation.
Representative Dan Larson.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I guess I have a question on the bill itself, page 36 and item number 1. I don't know if you want to look at that first, but I guess I question, is this Medicaid expansion? And if we get into this, is this something we have to carry forward? This is probably even worse than Medicaid expansion. It looks like 50-50 to me.
So it's not. So we have this now represented. We have this. This was the first one we done. We done it for hospitals. Then we come back and done it for nursing homes, and we just approved one for emergency medical service. And how this works is if the hospital is taking a patient on Medicaid, they're collecting Medicaid, that reimbursement to them is 50% state, as we've talked about, and 50% from the feds. Well, we could increase the state's portion. So if the state had in there $100, the feds are going to match $100. Well, if we increased it to $120, that would automatically raise as well. But that's a burden on our general fund. And so what we do here is the hospitals, both public and private, tax themselves. And they put this money to the Department of Health to increase the amount of general fund that we get, that we put in, to increase the amount of federal funds that they can get back. Then when they do the true-up, they get their tax back, plus then they divide the enhanced portion of the FMAP back. And so it gives them more income, particularly as they take care of indigent care and Medicaid, because in Wyoming, our Medicaid at 50-50, and you look at other states, you can see 70-30 and 60-40. When our hospitals get that reimbursement for Medicaid, it doesn't cover the amount of the burden of cost that oftentimes comes with the patient. But that's how the program works. And it was an idea that was brought forth by the Hospital Association. Then the long-term care facilities brought it, and we brought that on. So that's how that works.
Representative Fortner.
Thank you, Madam Chairlady. We was in committee this morning, and that was one of the biggest hangups was Medicare on House Bill 27. This bill's going to be debatable just because of Medicare, and I want everybody in this room to know we've held ourselves hostage to the federal government. And there's a little old lady in there in that meeting today, and she probably said it best of anybody that I've heard said so far. She said, "We've made the federal government the boss," and that's just exactly what we're doing. And we're doing it more all the time. We could eliminate a lot of this by being smart spenders, by redoing our school systems for one, and downsizing government for the second.
Representative Fortner, can we please stick to the questions of the actual sections of the bill, please?
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman.
Representative Stith.
Stivar.
Sorry, Stivar. I was looking at the wrong person.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. The question I got for the good bringer here
is with using all these ARPA funds and stuff, has anybody looked at the maintenance effort of what's going to cost once the ARPA funds run out? There's going to be a maintenance effort because we're using federal funding. No.
Representative Larson.
So that is really a good and important question. And that's one of the things that the department was tasked with navigating, was to ensure that receiving, now that's receiving of federal funds. ARPA dollars are federal dollars. It's maintenance of effort comes in when you put state dollars in. Okay, so if, for example, let's go back to Medicaid or whatever program we're looking at. If we accept these ARPA dollars and it required state dollars to match it, and then the ARPA dollars went away and they says you have to continue funding that would be a maintenance of effort requirement. But if you accept ARPA dollars to do an ARPA program, no. Now, I will give you an example of where we were concerned and we met that, is in the community and home-based services. So that's our DD providers, things of that nature. We had an enhanced 10% for 8 quarters. So 50-50, they now started paying 60. That freed up 10% over here. That 10% had to stay and be used for community and home-based services. If we had taken that 10% and put over here and built the west side stands, we had been in a pickle on maintenance of effort. But what we did, and I thought it was really quite brilliant, is they says, okay, we've got 17.5 freed up of money, we'll match it again with Medicaid dollars, and that's what we're using to rebase the DD providers for this biennium. So there hasn't been any exception of ARPA dollars that will burden the state with an ongoing increased maintenance of effort. It's a great question and it's important, and it's one that's been asked multiple times to make sure that we don't make a mistake there.
Representative Sweeney.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. So back to the Wyoming Home Services Program, page 90 or 39 of the budget bill. So just a little more clarification, and I truly appreciate the good representative's explanation of all of this, that I don't know how you keep it all straight. But in the explanation in here, starting at page top of 39, there's on line 3, if, and then drops down to line 5, expenditures of the monies received by the state of Wyoming from section 602, excluding those monies received for revenue replacement as created, is not enacted into law. The Department of Health implements a means testing requirement, develops and implements performance metrics, and then initiates negotiations for a waiver under the different titles. So, and then it further goes on, it is the intent of the legislature that the general fund appropriations specified of this footnote not be included in the Department of Health standard budget for the immediately succeeding fiscal biennium. And I think that's what it's saying is it's funded, as you explained, for 1 year. But if we don't hit all of those different requirements as put in, then do we only rely on supplemental, or what would be the position?
So thank you,
Representative
and I
Larson.
appreciate you catching something that I had left out, and I hadn't done it on purpose, but we've also applied for ARPA direct dollars to fund this. But if that doesn't qualify, we've got this general fund appropriation. So that takes care of Roman I. Then we start down on Roman 2, 3, and 4, and that's where telling the Department of Health, we're going to fund it for this first year, but then the Department of Health has to start the implementation, develop and implement performance metrics, and initiate negotiations for a waiver. And then when we come back into the supplemental year, we'll be able to make a decision based on that second year on what we found on how that should all be structured.
All right, before we go to the next section, just a quick privilege of the floor that the Airports Coalition has supplied a snack today. They're in the back. You might need it to get through this next one is Department of Family Services. Representative Larson.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I move Agency 49, Department of Family Services, found on page 20 of your summary sheet, pages 41 and 42 of your budget bill. This agency for the previous 4 years has been engaged in making overdue corrections to their budget, making sure that funds and expenditures were correct. This year should have this process completed by actions taken in notes 1 and 10, where corrections or adjustments are made in units 5801 at the boys' school and 5904 for protective and juvenile services. In note 2, the agency is once again directed by footnote 1 to prohibit the expansion of residential bed capacity above what it was on January 1, 2020. This footnote is found on page 41 of your budget bill, same language we had in our last couple of budgets. We've been working with the agency to upgrade some of their systems, their IT systems in 3, 4, and 5, and 10. We continue to do that, but the big one, and it was mentioned earlier, I think in one of the agencies, we're going to finally get YCAPS up and going. That's the case management system that's pretty antiquated, and it'll be at a cost of $25 million, 50% general funds, and that's so $12.5 million of that would be general funds. We adopt the governor's rec in note 6 to authorize use of $450,000 that we made available in last year to assess the surcharge on death certificates. I'm looking at the minority floor leader. We had a conversation on on indigent burials, and so this authorizes them now to start funding that on the death certificates. There will be a budget amendment because there's not enough that has been generated for that. The counties find themselves about 60,000 shy for this fiscal year, and we'll need to adjust that in a second read and amendment. We adopt governor's rec in note 6 to authorize use. Oh, I talked about that. So we also adopt governor's recs in notes 6, 7, 11, 12, and 14, which are HR stuff. And then we, in note 8, which is reference to the governor's letter 17, we use ARPA direct funds to cover $1 million shortfall of federal funds in crisis shelters. So we, around the state and some of the RTCs in your community, we buy capacity in those facilities for crisis shelters. And part of that is paid by federal dollars for when services are provided. Well, with the COVID, some of the services weren't provided, so we couldn't capture the federal dollars, and we're going to have to cover that with general funds. In note 13, we increased the governor's rec by $1.1 million in 435 federal funds for out-of-home placements. Those are the RTCs on page 42 of the budget bill, and that includes foster care, adoption, guardianships, subsidies, group homes, and residential treatments. That's a restoration a little bit and a little bump in the rebasing that they haven't had for a number of years. So with that, I'd answer any questions that you might have before I pirouette and do the splits. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. All right, next, Representative Stith, are you doing livestock boards? He's not in here. Oh, here he is.
Madam Chairman, members, I bring to you Agency 51 Livestock Board, soon to be a new streaming series. In Livestock Board, nothing much happening. The Joint Appropriations Committee added $60,000 for additional brucellosis testing. What that does is to alleviate a shortfall in that, and then you'll also see when we get to Section 303E in the budget that there's also carryover authority for brucellosis testing. Other than that, the budget's pretty flat, pretty skinny, and I would stand for any questions.
Okay, no one's rushing to the podium. So Representative Simpson, you are on department number 53.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Section 53, Department of Workforce Services, found on page 22 of your worksheet and page 43 in your bill. Folks, there's 41 notes here, but we're going to be able to dispense of them really quickly. And here's the reason why. All of the notes fall into the global categories of HR, IT, transfers, or B11s. All of them except one. So let's go to the one. Note number 21. JC adopted the governor's rec of $1.5 million of federal funds for Wyoming unemployment insurance maintenance and support to operate the unemployment insurance computer software system. All the rest of them fall in the global categories. Madam Chairwoman, are there any questions?
All right, Representative Stith, you're up again. You have number 55, Oil and Gas Commission. On deck is Representative Schwartz.
Madam Chairman, members, I bring to you Agency 55, Oil and Gas Commission. What we can say about this is that the Joint Appropriations Committee made no changes from the recommended budget. I would stand for any questions.
All right, Representative Schwartz. On deck is Representative Kenner for number 60.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. So agency number 57, Community College Commission, page 24 of your budget, summary sheet, page 44 of your budget. If we look at this, we have adopted almost all of the governor's recs with two exceptions. One would be number 6, where we reduced $3.2 million in special revenue for contingency reserve. The reason we reduced it is because the revenue stream for this are coal lease bonuses, and we have not received any revenue into this fund for many years, and the prospect of receiving them is not good either. So it seemed wise just to get rid of that entire piece of their budget. Moving on to numbers 7 and 8. They're both involved with the Wyoming Investment in Nursing Program. And in number 7, we adopted the Gov's rec of a little over $1 million for faculty. And then in number 8, we reduced his request of general fund money and replaced it with ARPA direct funding because that was a better use of our general funds. So other than that, I stand for any questions.
Seeing none, all right. Representative Kenner, and on deck is Chairman Nicholas.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Ladies and gentlemen, I bring you Section 60, State Land and Investments, page 25 in your summary sheet and page 45 of your bill. I'm going to highlight a couple of the global motions. Item number 1 and number 8 were part of the IT global motion. Item number 3 was part of the global motion on human resources. And then on the back, and let's see, when you get further down, numbers 14, 15, and 20 were part of the reductions of B11s. Put this in so we don't have the constant B11 transfers taking place. So getting to some of the other numbers, starting on note number 2, The JAC adopted the governor's rec of $150,000 for an investment consultant. This was to increase the next round of investment consultants. And then on item number 4, really the bottom line there is we did increase 60,000 general fund and 695,000 for S5 for the State Trust Land Preservation and Enhancement Account. And note number 5, the JAC adopted the governor's rec of $199,000 general funds for Surface Land Management Account System, SLAMS. Note number 6, the governor we adopted the governor's rec of $20 million, and you can see how it's broken out there, $16 million in federal funds and $4,164,000 in special revenue for the Clean Water State Revolving Fund program. The next item, note number 7, the JAC adopted the governor's rec of $14 million, and it's broken out in those two different numbers there, 11.8 and 2.9 for the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund. Note number 8, the JAC adopted a technical correction of 397 special revenue, and you can see that we had to clarify funding source for local government capital construction account. That was just a correction. Item number 10, note number 10, JAC adopted the governor's rec of $20 million one time for the emergency fire suppression account. And you'll remember that we have had some pretty serious fire problems in the last few years, and with the current drought going on, that was felt it was necessary to have that to kind of beef up that account. Note number 11, the JAC adopted $2 million special revenue to increase spending authority for the emergency fire suppression account. So that is the spending authority. Note number 12, the JAC adopted the governor's rec of $1,100,000 general fund one time for the single engine air tankers seats contract. That's air tankers to fly and a quick attack on fires to hopefully get them put out in a fairly quick manner. So that contract, you can see there, $1,000,001. Note number 13, JAC adopted the governor's rec of $171,000 for a fire helicopter contract. That's also to have quick attacks on fires. And then I mentioned 14 and 15, so jumping to note number 16, the JAC reduced $25,400,000 for the mineral royalties grants, the MRG program. Note number 17, JAC adopted the governor's rec of $4 million for an increase in spending authority from Fire Protection Revolving Fund. Note number 18, the JAC adopted the governor's letter number 7, $140,000 general fund for the state forestry Good Neighbor revolving account for contracts and travel. Note number 19, the JAC adopted the governor's rec of $3,141,000 for the Good Neighbor Authority revolving account. And let's see, that completes, I mentioned number 20 in my global motions. Be happy to answer any questions. And Madam Chairwoman, if there are no questions, we can go on to the next agency.
All right, that's Chairman Nicholas. Number 63, Governor's Residence. And up next after him is, you can just continue on if there's no questions, to number 66, Tourism.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. So I bring you the Governor's Residence, Section 63. Very simple, short little budget. 3 components to it. Adopted the Gov's Rec, $25,000 to transfer 100 series for personnel. Remember, we reduced their personnel during the budget cuts, and so we're in order to maintain the property and to have folks there, and when guests arrive, it's pretty clear that they need that back. We adopted the Gov's Rec of $1,000 one time for information technology, and finally we added $30,000 back in the Governor's Residence. This was a cut by the First Lady, but we believe it's necessary for her entertainment and for what they're doing. So ask for your favorable consideration. If you don't have any questions, I will move on to Wyoming Tourism, Section 66. And going to the summary sheet, you can see that the first action taken by the JAC was to adopt the governor's rec of $222,433,000 and change, swapping basically special revenue, which is your lodging tax for general fund, which is the new funding source for ongoing operations and activities from the tourism department. Then you go number 2, we adopted the governor's rec of 8.8 one-time funds to grow visitation and increase brand exposure. Down to number 3, we adopted Gov's rec for $5 million for destination development. Number 4, we adopted Gov's rec for $340,000 for enhanced digital platform. As you can see, we didn't hardly deny anything. It was very uncharacteristic of the House, of the Joint Appropriations Committee. We adopted $426,000 to revive domestic travel trade, adopted the Gov's rec for $676,000 to revive international markets. We did deny the governor's rec for $1.2 for interagency support and collaboration. We adopted the Gov's rec for $220 for Team Wyoming. We adopted the governor's rec $62,000 for operation and subscriptions and licenses. Gov's rec, we adopted $1.5 million one time for renovation of the welcome centers. Next, we adopted the Gov's rec for $250,000 for workforce development and higher education. We adopted the Gov's rec for $2 million special revenue one time to transfer to the Parks and Rec Cultural Outdoor. I think we talked about that a little bit earlier, and that's for the for outdoor rec and trails. And finally, we denied Gov's rec letter 17 for $10 million for destination defining development. And as I mentioned in my opening statements, after reviewing what our actions were earlier last week, there will probably be a mirror amendment. I just bring this up so you're ready to defend it for all you folks that want to keep the budget as we presented it. But the proposed amendment is going to cut number 2 and number 3 in half. So that will go down to 8.4 million and 2.5 million on those 2 projects. So I just want you to put all our cards on the table so you know what we're doing. So I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Representative Newsom.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and thank you for that heads up on the proposed amendment. I did have a question on number 8. As we look at the Team Wyoming, which I'm a big fan of the Team Wyoming program, which funds our college rodeo teams and our community college rodeo teams, as well as our professional athletes. But I did notice in the UW budget, which is next, University of Wyoming, that on item 3 there is an added $200,000 for the university rodeo team. So I wondered with that added $200,000 for that rodeo team, if that would make them ineligible for the Team Wyoming funds, or if that would be in addition to the Team Wyoming funds. Thank you.
Representative Walters.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. The question is about that it really comes in the Agency 67, the $200,000 for the UW rodeo team, and that is going to be discussed in the next agency. But that's really the rodeo team within the University of Wyoming will be moving from the Department of Agriculture into the athletics department, and that's the money to fund them while and their needs within the athletics department versus in the Department of Agriculture, or the College of Agriculture, excuse me, within the University of Wyoming. It has the 2 of them are not related in any form.
Representative Newsom.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. So with the community colleges, I did not notice a corresponding support, extra support for their rodeo teams.
Representative Walters.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. The community colleges are funding their rodeo programs in a different format throughout their block grant. This was just due to the change in the way the university is going to be operating their rodeo teams. As I said, these have the money within Team Wyoming and the Department of Tourism is not related to any of the funding at the university or the community colleges.
Okay, I don't see anyone else rushing. So Representative Walters, you're up for the next 4.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Starting out with Agency 67, the University of Wyoming. You'll find this on page 27 of your summary sheet and page 49 through 53 of your bill. The JAC adopted the Chief Executive Standard Budget and took action on the following items. JAC added footnote number 1, which is different than a summary note. These are the footnotes in the budget. $10 million to effectuate the Chief Executive's request for athletic competitiveness matching funds noted in summary note 1. This has been in the budget for the last probably 8 or 10 years. It's been there, as I said. JAC also adopted the Chief Executive's recommendation of $7.2 million one-time increase to the university state aid block grant and maintain a flat operating budget which will maintain a flat operating budget when compared to the 21-22 biennium. And this is summary note 2. And this is really related to maintenance of effort and maintenance of equity for the higher education federal funds that are coming in. And without this, the state would be dropping below those maintenance of effort, maintenance of equity issues. And so we had to bring that back in. JAC adopted the Chief Executive's denial of the recommendation and added the $200,000 for the UW rodeo team, added footnote number 2, which is summary note number 3. This is the discussion we just went through regarding funding versus tourism funding for Team Wyoming. As I said, this is where the university is moving the rodeo team from the Department of Agriculture into the department, or into the athletics department, and so the funding needed to go along with it. JAC adopted the Chief Executive's recommendation to reauthorize previously appropriated AML, abandoned mineland funds, for UW Energy Science student stipends. There's approximately $310,000 available. This was started with $2.8 million in 2011. And you will also note that this is going to show up in section 316 in the section 300s. That's summary note number 4. JAC adopted the Chief Executive Letter number 17 regarding the WWAMI tuition and fee inflation for $1.5 million general fund. JAC added footnote number 3, specifying these funds are only available after all permissible federal funds have been exhausted, which is summary note number 5. JAC adopted Executive Letter number 12 for $1.17 million for the School of Energy Resources related to energy regulation and policy analysis, summary note number 6. JAC adopted Chief Executive recommendation of $130,000 for the School of Energy Resources, allowing for a flat budget in that unit, which is summary note number 7. JAC adopted Chief Executive Letter number 17 for $2 million for nuclear energy collaboration and training in the School of Energy Resources, and added footnote number 4, making the appropriation effective immediate. That's summary note number 8. JAC adopted Executive Letter number 17 for $2 million for energy policy and development and hydrogen hub, and added footnote number 5, which is summary note 9. JAC added $300,000 for a feasibility study within the School of Energy Resources of carbon capture and utilization, and added footnote number 6, which is summary note number 10. JAC added $2.5 million for 2 endowed professorships in excellence in applied agriculture and rangeland management, and added footnote 7. That will be seen in summary note number 11. JAC added $25 million of SIPA to match research grants related to flow through porous media, and added footnote number 8, which imposes a number of conditions on the appropriation to ensure that the research is relevant to and advances Wyoming and its producers and Wyoming students. And with that, Mr. Chairman, that is a summary of the budget actions within the University of Wyoming, Agency 67. Are there any questions?
Questions on Agency 67? You got questions? Representative making his way to the mic. Gray.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Was there any discussion about the law clinic at UW, the controversy there, and potential withdrawal of state funds because of that, because of what happened at that law clinic, if you've heard about that issue?
Representative Walters.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We did take testimony on that at our September meeting, our October meeting. And really the issue has been resolved. B, It was principally a misunderstanding, as the individual that was brought in to teach was not teaching the class that was demonstrated within the book listing what the classes are. And so the individual of controversy was really just managing the class of about 5 students, bringing in experts in the area of energy policy and law. And those experts came from industry, oil, gas, coal, and industry that really is Wyoming Industries. The dean from the College of Law did come before our committee on 2 different occasions and explained how that it was more of a seminar class than it was, and it was portrayed, it was operating differently than it was portrayed within the curriculum book. And so this committee felt that the appropriate steps had been taken to rectify the situation that was of concern at the University of Wyoming.
Chairman Nicholas.
Yeah, just to follow up on that, and I'd be happy to provide you a couple letters that we received on this particular issue when this arose. But what's remarkable is our law school has more instructors for natural resource law and energy development law than any law school its size, on percentage-wise, of any law school in the United States, for the most part. That is our understanding. And we have practicum programs there that teach folks about how to pursue energy law and environmental law that is second to none, and one of the highest rated practicum programs in the United States as well. So it's actually kind of remarkable. Number one, how many of our professors are Wyoming bar members? How many of them are have specialty in energy law, in natural resources, and the types of programs that they pursue and they teach. And so, but I'll be happy to distribute it out if you'd like to see it. But it's just a fantastic program.
Okay, Representative Walters, you want to continue?
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Moving on to Agency 69, WICHE. WICHE will appear on page 27 of your summary sheet and page 54 of your bill if you're following along. WICHE is the Western Interstate Commission on Higher Education. Has a biennial budget of approximately $4.4 million, of which over 90% goes to support fees for students in health professional programs. The majority of these students are contractually obligated to return to the state to practice healthcare. This is not a university-ran program, although the university has been the administrator for many years. The JAC adopted the chief executive's recommended standard budget with no increases. Are there any questions on WICHE, Agency 69?
Okay, go ahead and continue. Number 70.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. We are on Agency 70, the Enhanced Oil Recovery Commission. For this, you will find it on page 28 of your summary sheet, page 54 of your bill. The Enhanced Oil Recovery Commission, EORC, was created by the legislature with the intent to backfill the vacuum left during the oil market depression in the 1970s and 80s. The goal is to facilitate a meaningful and measurable increase in recoverable reserves and production of oil and gas in Wyoming that may otherwise not be realized. The JAC adopted the Chief Executive Standard Budget, and JAC added Section 317 to reappropriate funds used by the agency in the 2023 biennium. These funds have accrued starting in 2006, and these are really dollars that were given over from the EORC to the University of Wyoming. The university had discovered them in an audit they did over the last couple of years that they had not all been expended, and so this is the reappropriation of those funds for this agency. Are there any questions?
All right, Representative Nicholas, number 72.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ladies and gentlemen, I bring you the state retirement system and talk a little bit about their budget. So the state retirement now has close to $10 billion in investments. And when I first got to the legislature 12 years ago, they were in the bottom quartile in terms of their return on their investment compared to comparable state retirement systems. over the course of years and with, as we changed out and became more sophisticated, paying more attention and the quality of personnel that they've retained, they are now in the top quartile. I think last year was roughly 14% return. Is really kind of remarkable. So they've done a great job and doing wonderful things for the state employees. So going to their budget, I'll just very quickly run through the footnotes and comment on them at the end. So JC added footnote number 1, specifying that the folks that are receiving the investment staff can't give pay raises without approval through the appropriations. That's because these are the folks that get the performance compensation. And so their compensation is different than, they're not subject to the pay raises that we're having or shouldn't be. But at some point we may be increasing them based upon performance, and the better they perform, the more they make. Number 2, we adopted, that's $280 million for IT. Number 3, the Govs adopted GovsRec for 1.3 for their RAIN system. Those of you who are familiar with it, that's you can get onto the RAIN system and find out exactly how much you have in your retirement account, what the returns is. It's a very interactive, friendly program that does a nice job for folks. Number 4, the GovsRec, $340,000 for a physical server on their virtual server. Number 5, $260,000 on salary adjustments. So you'll see 3 or 4 different salary adjustments in their budget. What we kind of discovered, and I guess discovered again, it might be a better way to say it, is agencies have different ways of giving pay increases without going through the traditional process of A&I. And various, they go and reclassify, they do different things, or when someone retires, then they'll go and they'll reclassify the position so it comes in at a higher number. Well, retirement did that in 3 or 4 different instances this year. And, it was done before it happened. So they already did it. And then they came back and then say, well, this is what we've done, and please approve our pay increases. And we gently pushed back and said, this isn't the way it's supposed to be done. We met with A&I and said, is this what's taking place? And they said yes. And they walked through the process with us. And we said, well, we want to change this process. We want to have all the agencies be alerted that we're going to be more scrutinous on this type of practice. But this is one of the agencies where it just came to the forefront, and we discussed it with them. And you'll see probably in an interim topic in JAC, a more detailed, deeper dive into that issue. So then going on, the JC adopted the GovsRec for $137,000, one-time full-time equivalent position and additional benefits for the specialist members in the member benefits. Then going to the next one, $100,000 for actuarial audit, $87,000 to move 500 series on rental space of the deferred comp to the defined comp. So that's just a transactional component. $43,000 for salary adjustments. That was one of those other ones that was a key to us that want us to address the issue. $27,000 to eliminate a legacy budget. That was just, both of those are just getting rid of accounting procedures. Number 12, $39,000 for salary adjustments once again. And finally, $88,000 once again for series rental space and deferred comp. So be happy to answer any questions.
Representative Stith, you're up.
Madam Chairman, members, happy to bring to you Agency 77, Enterprise Technology Services. This is the agency that deals with all the computer systems, all the information technology across all state agencies, and also for our K through 12 institutions as well. The Joint Appropriations Committee made very few changes, adopted all of the governor's recommendations. The only change was to add an additional $100,000 for information technology infrastructure at the Life Resource Center in Lander for the Department of Family Services. You'll notice note 1, again, this is page 29 of the crib sheet. and then it is page 56
One more.
on the budget bill. You'll notice note 1, $965,430 general fund for cybersecurity initiatives and security enhancements. This agency is obsessed with cybersecurity. The next biggest line item is $3 million for the unified network upgrades, but inside that, $3 million is $1.9 million approximately for firewalls, also a cybersecurity issue. This agency is focused on cybersecurity, and in this last calendar year assisted one of our local governmental entities that was actually the subject of a ransomware attack. And so we've got to be vigilant about this, and so I think the priorities here seem to be appropriate. Other than that, the governor's recommendations are things you might expect. This agency also is coordinating, so for our really big software projects, say for the Department of Family Services with their upgrade that they've got to do to be in compliance with federal law, this agency works with that. For the upcoming revenue information system with our Department of Transportation, this agency works with them on that. So there's a lot going on in this agency, and I think they're working. So I would stand for any questions.
Representative Gray.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Where are we on centralizing the ETS positions? Just like we're doing the HR centralization, we really need to be centralizing these IT positions. That's the whole point of ETS. And this dual thing where you've got ETS and then every agency has their IT positions as well is really duplicative and not yielding efficiencies. And if we're going to go that direction, then should we have a centralized enterprise service anyway? So where are we on this? How many IT positions are outstanding across government outside of ETS? And how are we going to get to the finish line in centralizing these positions?
Representative Stiff.
Madam Chairman, and for the good representative from District 57, as you can see, we have 229 positions in the agency. Your question is, how many information technology people are there who don't work for this agency? The short answer is, I don't know. However, for example, with the revenue information system, to take that one as an example, inside the Department of Transportation, I believe there is a corresponding counterpart inside that organization. And you might ask, well, why is the revenue information system, because it affects so many agencies, why is it in that Department of Transportation at all? And the short answer is we need the highway funds to pay for it, okay? So that's one reason why we're doing it that way. ETS really is pretty centralized. That is, they really have coordinated a lot. Any agency that wants to do a new IT project, it goes through ETS for its approval. But the short answer to your question is, I don't know.
All right. One more? All right, one more. Representative Stith, Department of Corrections.
All right. Members, I bring to you agency number 80, Department of Corrections, page 30 of your crib sheet. So this agency, here's the big picture, folks. If you look on our crib sheet here, you'll see that total appropriations for this coming biennium are $262 million. 2 years ago, it was $289 million. So they've achieved a savings of $27 million. This agency is working really hard to be efficient with taxpayer dollars. They are doing a pretty phenomenal job. The agency budget is a bit complicated to read because they're doing a major overhaul of how it's organized inside the agency. So for example, before they would have a division where the correctional facility in Rollins was one division, the correctional facility in Torrington was a complete different division. They're consolidating those divisions and they're being given essentially superflex authority to allocate funds as between the two as they need them. One of the biggest challenges for the Department of Corrections has been compensation for its employees, getting people who will work at the facility in Carbon County, for example. So the agency now has the flexibility to, frankly, bump up the pay a little bit for guards at the facility in Rollins if it needs to make sure that people show up to work. That kind of flexibility seems to make sense in this instance. It's important for us as the legislature to monitor that, to make sure that's not abused. I mean, theoretically, it means that if the agency director wanted to, the facility in Torrington, everyone there could eat Chateaubriand every night for dinner, and there might be just porridge and lentils and rice in the facility in Rollins, right? That's theoretically possible, right, with the Superflex authority. But it seems to be working. To go through the notes here, the highlighted items here, and again, big picture here, where our executive branch deserves a real shout out. Because this agency is basically entirely funded with general funds, or mostly with general funds, because of that reason, it became a good vehicle for ARPA revenue replacement. So what we're doing, and still doing on a monthly basis, and will continue to do so through, I believe, December of 2024 or June of 2024, one of the two, is to use of the $1.068 billion of ARPA, to use those monies to fund as much of this department as you can under a revenue replacement theory up to our limit so that we can achieve $584 million of revenue replacement in total. That's the target. Why are we doing that? Why is the executive branch doing that? The executive branch is doing that because by using those 584 million of the billion, 0.068, for revenue replacement, you essentially strip away the federal strings off of that money, and now you have what's called ARPA conserved funds. So that makes a lot of other things we're doing in the budget possible. You can then use that $584 million for other things. So this agency is the one that's making that all possible. I would point out on the notes here, the ones that I find interesting are notes 11 and 12. We are using funds for the pursuant to what the work the Judiciary Committee did a few years ago on quality control unit and also for alternative sanctions. That was House Bill 53 and House Bill 31. That was part of the reforms that we undertook so that we could, one, keep the prison population as low as you can get it while preserving public safety. And part of that is one of the recommendations was to have a quality control unit to make sure that your sanctions are appropriate, to make sure that you're paroling the people you should parole, and keeping the people in the facility who should stay in the facility. So we added money back in for that. It's a big agency, but that's the big picture. So I would stand for any questions.
Representative Henderson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Quick question. Regarding our parolees, is there anything in this part of the budget to support, in a lot of our rural areas, we don't have the manning or the people in place that know how to, help the parolees transition and stay in their home areas and work and stay out of, the situation where they go back to prison. So is that in this budget? If so, where?
Representative Stitt.
Madam Chairman, so it is true the step 2 cuts and step 3 cuts were taken very seriously by this agency. One of the factors, of course, you want your parolees to do well. You don't want them to become recidivists. By the numbers so far, the recidivism rates in the most couple recent years are down. That is, the recidivism rate is down. That's not a direct answer to your question. It is my understanding we added back a couple of field agents for them a year ago as a budget amendment, I believe. I'm not sure that quite answers your question. I'll try to get more specific answers for you if you need to. Thank you.
Okay, Majority Floor Leader.
Madam Chairman,
I move that the committee of the whole rise and report.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. Motion's carried.
Reading clerk, read the committee of the whole report.
Mr. Speaker, your committee of the whole, having had under consideration bills on general file, begs leave to report as follows. House Bill 1, explanation of budget bills, section 1 through section 80. Representative Duncan, chairman.
In accordance with Joint Rule 14-1, further committee of the whole action will be continued until the next legislative day. Thank you. Thank you, Representative Duncan. The only flaw in your entire performance was you didn't leave the cookie that you had left over for the speaker. So well done. Thank you very much. Well done, Appropriations Committee. Thank you for your work. We'll continue that tomorrow as well. Messages from the Senate.
Message 116. Mr. Speaker, the bill listed below passed the Senate on third reading in an amended form by the vote indicated. Senate File 8, Weed and Pest Reorganization. Ayes 29, conflict 1. Message 117. Mr. Speaker, the bill listed below passed the Senate on third reading by the vote indicated. Senate File 25, District Judge Positions, Authorization. Ayes 28, noes 2. Message 118. Mr. Speaker, the bill listed below passed the Senate on third reading in an amended form by the vote indicated. Senate File 27, Dissolution of County Boards Authority. Ayes 29, noes 1. Message 119. Mr. Speaker, the bill listed below passed the Senate on third reading by the vote indicated. Senate File 3, Radioactive Materials Transport Fee. Ayes 16, noes 14. Message 120. Mr. Speaker, the bill listed below passed the Senate on third reading by the vote indicated. Senate File 29, Liability for Governmental Healthcare Providers, Amendment. Ayes 28, noes 1, conflict 1. Message 121. Mr. Speaker, the bill listed below passed the Senate on third reading in an amended form by the vote indicated. Senate File 31, Absenteeism and Truancy. Ayes 30. Message 122. Mr. Speaker, the bill listed below failed to pass the Senate third reading by the vote indicated. Senate File 33, Codification of Education Resource Block Grant Model. Ayes 9, noes 21. Message 123. Mr. Speaker, the bill listed below passed the Senate on third reading in an amended form by the vote indicated. Senate File 35, Electric Vehicle Charging Stations Regulation Exemption. Ayes 30. Message 124. Mr. Speaker, the bill listed below passed the Senate on third reading in an amended form by the vote indicated. Senate File 38, Monthly Ad Valorem Tax Revisions. Ayes 30. Message 125. Mr. Speaker, the bill listed below passed the Senate on third reading by the vote indicated.
Senate File 46, Solid Waste Cease and Transfer Program Funding, ayes 30. Message 126, Mr. Speaker, the bill listed below passed the Senate on third reading by the vote indicated. Senate File 98, Federal Emergency COVID-19 Relief Funding Limitations, ayes 30. Message 127, Mr. Speaker, the Senate adopted the Committee of the Whole report, failing the bills listed below by the vote indicated. Senate File 28, Sex Offender Termination of Duty to Register Amendments, ayes 9, noes 21. Sincerely, Ellen Thompson, Senate Chief Clerk.
Mr. Majority Floor Leader.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. And before I make the motion, so our committee of the whole list tomorrow will basically be the yellow sheet you see today, which is House Bill 65, 49, 52, 16, 17, 47, 6, 62, 2, 3, 86, House Joint 1, House Bill 87, 63, 96, and 83. And Mr. Speaker, I move that the House adjourn until 10 a.m. tomorrow, the 22nd day of February, 2022.
Committee announcements. Chairman Nicholas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So you can tell the cold weather's arriving because Appropriations is presenting the budget. It kind of chills us to the bone to have to listen to that all day, so thanks for your patience. So your House Appropriations Committee will meet on adjournment. We will meet in room 110, House Bill 107 and 146, plus re-referrals 31, 73, and 110. Tomorrow at 8:30, we will hear, as time permits, Senate File 66, 67, 39, and 2 in E301.
Chairman Burkhart.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your committee number 8, Transportation, will meet tomorrow, 15 minutes after noon recess, to consider House Bill 18, Off-Road Recreational Vehicle Registration Amendments, House Bill 81, Operation of Motorcycles, Disabled Persons, and House Bill 82, Military Discharge and Benefits.
Chairman Harshman.
Mr. Speaker, your committee number 3, Revenue, will meet tomorrow in Extension Meeting Room number 3. That's tomorrow, Tuesday, February 22nd at 8:30 a.m. to hear 2 bills, House Bill 105 and House Bill 109. Thank you.
Further announcements. Further announcements. So members, the weather has really significantly changed, and northern parts of the state, I guess, are very bitter. So those of you that have folks doing the chores for you back home, which I know there's several of us, shout out to them and show your appreciation to them, because they're going to pay for our being gone for a few days. Also recall that we have numerous receptions tonight. Tomorrow night is our county commissioners have, many of you have dinners with them. We're going to do our best to get us out of here in a timely manner so you can participate with those elected officials from our communities. Certainly will be our intention. I think we'll have third reading tomorrow, likely do some committee of the whole bills, and then we'll go back to the budget. And then if we have time after the budget, we'll maybe take up some more committee of the whole. So I see Representative Newman. Please proceed. Newsom, excuse me, Newsom, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Committee numbers, whatever we are, Travel, Recreation,
7.
Travel, Recreation, and Wildlife will meet tomorrow at noon, 15 minutes after noon recess, and have House Bill 54, State Parks Recreation Management Authority, and House Bill 72, Hunting License Application Funds.
Thank you, Vice Chairman Newsom. Further announcements? Further announcements. So again, members, keep track of those receptions and things. A lot of folks have come here to see you, and they might be stuck here for a few days, some of them. So reach out to them. And then with that, seeing no further business, The House is adjourned on this 6th day of the 66th Wyoming budget session until 10 a.m. on the 7th day, February 22nd, 2022. We are adjourned.